You ready? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the May 7, 2024 meeting of the Southborough Select Board at 6:30. And first, an announcement about the agenda. There's two items listed under executive session, and we are not going to be entertaining tonight. The second item under the executive session, we're going to be tabling that for tonight. So that's if anyone is interested in that, I wanted to advise people about that. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and public comment's an opportunity for members of the public to speak to an item that's not on the agenda. We try to keep public comments to 3 minutes, and it's not intended as a deliberation or a back and forth, but an opportunity for people to bring items to the attention to the select board that are not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Okay, Cindy?
So you probably all remember, I'm Cindy Foster from 3 Aspenwood Lane. I appreciate the response to my last visit, the beginning of February. Certainly wasn't the answer that I wanted to hear, that I'm not eligible to be reimbursed for the fact that I'm paying for my own insurance now. I don't know if it's just because there's no way to do it, or I didn't make the point that I didn't have a choice but to opt out because what was promised wasn't delivered. But it is what it is, and at least I'm happy I live in Southborough and I can vote. That's about the only way I can go. But it does lead me to another question. And if you can't answer it here, that's fine. I'll look forward to a response. The informational meeting that I went to, the question was asked, what was the savings to the town going to be by switching to Aetna? And the number that was given was $60,000. And then I saw numbers from the treasurer's office that went into some more detail, and that number was about $63,000. But the night that you all voted in the Aetna plan, you talked about $90,000 savings. So what I'm wondering is the difference between the 63 to the 90, is that because you expected that many people to opt out? Or was it just a wrong number? Or I really would like an answer to that question at some point. Okay.
Okay.
And the only other point is I'm glad that you're going to bid the health insurance consultant, because I'm not sure that that's ever, it says it was bid informally. I'm not sure it's ever been done formally, but it's not going to be done in until FY25. So I was hoping, well, I don't know. I mean, that's a year-long process. So I'm just interested in what the time frame is on that.
Well, FY25 starts July 1st of 24.
Mike?
Yeah.
I gotta do it again because I want to talk to the mic.
Got
So
it.
it starts July 1st of 24, so it's only a couple months away.
So it will probably be bid sooner than later in 25.
We'll get back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? No hands up. All right, I see Mr. Cundiff just joined the online audience here. Okay, is Tony Roselli available?
he is not, but I believe, well, you get your first item.
Yep. So the first item on the agenda, which was tabled and was continued from the last meeting on April 23rd, is the interview and appointment of Karen Bernhard to the 21 Highland Future Use Committee. So what I understand is we've the select board office has made efforts to follow up with her by phone and email. We have not been able to contact her. So at this point, I don't think that we should entertain this item for a third time.
Yep, I think she's had ample opportunity, and if she can't make it, that's fine, but I think we take her off the list and move on,
Okay,
look for others.
so then we'll use this opportunity to explain there's one vacancy left on the 21 Highland Future Use Committee. And we're eager to have someone join. There's already, I see on the consent agenda, we've got 2 people who we appointed who didn't get sworn in within the required time period, but with those, we then have a quorum, the committee can start meeting, but I think what we really could benefit from is someone that's got experience in construction, project management, real estate, something like that. I think it would help kind of balance out the composition of the committee. So if anyone knows of anyone who's interested in the online audience or on the board, please reach out and encourage people to volunteer. Okay, and then our auditor, Tony Roselli, is not in the online audience.
So
Yep.
my understanding from Mr. Ballantyne is that Mr. Roselli and Ms. Bourneville from who's our OPEB auditor from KMS Actuaries have had a conversation, and we're going to get the OPEB discussion first.
Great, okay. So Linda, are you available? Thanks.
I think I just got promoted to a panelist.
Congratulations. That
Yeah,
comes with an extra stipend.
yeah. Oh, wow. Well, thanks for having me here for your select board meeting to go over the results of our most recent actuarial valuation of your OPEB program. We do have a presentation, and Brian assured me that somebody would be, there we go, screening, sharing a screen. If the chair allows, I do not mind interruptions and questions, because sometimes, you know, if I'm on a slide or talking about something in particular, it's just as easy to clarify
Absolutely.
it at that point. I presume there's no actuaries on this board, so, you know, it's the stuff we do every day, but it's not stuff you might see every day. So I'm totally okay with an interruption as we go along.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So we can move ahead to the next slide. So quick agenda, we're just going to kind of go through why do we do this? What is the purpose of the valuation? We'll look at some key results for FY23, your OPEB plan funded status. You do have assets set aside in an OPEB trust, so we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll kind of talk about what exactly do we do in this actuarial valuation of this program. And then, you know, the ultimate point of doing all of this work is for your financial statements. We do have some disclosures on OPEB that we actually provide to you all so that you can include them in your financial statements. So that will be a beautiful segue for Tony to get into when he piggybacks on this presentation. Next slide, please. So just a real quick introduction. My name is Linda Bourneville. I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. We have a whole lot of committees that one could be on. I'm actually on a committee called the Social Insurance and Public Finance section. We talk about things like Social Security, pensions, OPEB with other actuaries. I'm an enrolled actuary under ERISA. I'm a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. That means that they're sort of our standards guidance group. We are a self-regulating profession that our members actually develop what's called the Actuarial Standards of Practice. It assures the public of the work that we do is kind of follows some guidance and standards so that, you know, that the public can trust in us. And also I'm a fellow of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries. It just means I pay a whole lot of dues a lot and attend a whole bunch of meetings and try to keep up with all the things that kind of go on here. I have a lot of years of experience doing this. I owned KMS Actuaries. We have a staff of 5 that actually work with me. I could not do this by myself, believe me. And we do a fair amount of OPEB / retiree medical valuation type work, these accounting disclosures, mostly in Massachusetts. Actually, that's pretty much our largest presence is in Mass. And we do a lot of public pension, actuarial work as well. We are the actuaries for Worcester Regional, in which you guys are members of. They have over 100 contributing employers, so we work as a, provide guidance to them as well. We can move on. Thank you.
Actually, before we move on to the next slide, there's one point I wanted to make on your last bullet there, pension obligation bonds. One kind of update of this year versus last year at our annual town meeting in the March. We passed, I believe what we passed is authorizing us to ask to pursue via special act of the state legislature, the authority to bond pension obligations. And I think our understanding has always been we would have to wait until there's a more favorable interest rate environment to do that. But I just wanted to, one of the reasons we did that is we have a kind of a goal setting meeting, and we remember that from the prior presentations, I think a year or two ago. So we've now given ourselves that tool and toolkit.
And we saw that other towns had done that in the past when interest rates were very favorable. I think Arlington issued a bunch of these bonds and saved quite a bit of money. So we wanted to have that possibility without having to go back to the legislature and wait for 2 years.
Yeah, $75 million bond.
It's a good idea to actually start and get yourself set up as you did, because the process can be very drawn out, long and drawn out. We worked with Brockton, and we worked with Andover back in 2020/2021 when Brockton could not have hit it more beautifully when they finally were able to execute and sell the bond. So they got in, it was in the low twos, I think.
Right.
And so when you're funding your pension obligation, at the 7.25 returns, but you're able to bond some of it at a much lower discount rate, that's when it's favorable. We actually worked with Springfield as well. And as I said, things kind of take a long time. You got to get to, the state to kind of approve this process. There's just a lot of work. And as we were working, it was the beginning of 2022, I believe it was. And every day we were watching those rates, and they just started, going on the incline. The Fed was starting to aggressively raise the rate. So they actually pulled the plug at the last minute and never really went through with it, only because of the environment that was.
But good option to have, so.
But
Yeah,
Linda,
yep.
what do you think the time frame is from start to end as far as what you need to actually execute?
I'm thinking back at our process in Brockton, and I think it was like 6 to 8 months that, just starting
fast.
out, getting the groups of people
Correct.
together who, you've got your bond counsel, the underwriters, other financial advisors, probably your municipal advisors, and then all the folks from the towns. So there was a lot of, process, and we did a lot of modeling on the what ifs. So those kinds of things kind of need to be reviewed and analyzed and all that.
And that's after we get the special act approved. So there's lead time in front of that even, so.
Right.
So Linda, your firm can do the modeling to make sure we understand what the potential savings are?
Well, there's the potential savings, but then there's also the potential risks. So that's really what we're
But
modeling.
you can do the model to truly spell it out.
Yeah, yep. So the kind of things we did is, here we are, what's status quo? What's your baseline? Now, what would happen if your assets in your pension fund right now, we kind of duplicated what happened in 2008, right? So what would happen if you purchased, you sold the bonds, and a year later, a 2008 occurs? What would that mean to the funding? Remember, you're really just replacing a form of debt. I mean, paying off a pension obligation is a form of debt. You do have some control, meaning the retirement system, the retirement board has some control over those assumptions and how you might fund it within the statute, within Chapter 32. But now you're going to kind of replace that little bit of flexibility with a pretty hard, a definite debt obligation through bonds. So there's that risk, right? That, well, sorry, your appropriations just like kind of went up again because assets did not return what we expected, or, there was a severe downturn in the market, but you're still on the hook for those bonds.
So do you transfer the proceeds from the bond sales directly to Worcester?
So we have to talk about that because
Well, let's not get in, okay, so.
yeah, so Brockton,
Okay.
as you know, it's a city
We're not
and
quite
it's
there
got its, they have a few different departments that participated in the bond. The way Brockton does an allocation, like, we're able to earmark the bond proceeds to the groups, the employers that actually participate in the bond, the city. I can't remember off the top of my head what some of the other ones were. Andover, Andover has a housing authority. They did not participate in the bond. So we have to make sure we can segregate those bond proceeds so that the town's appropriations will be reflected by those pension obligation bonds. I'm having fun, you guys, by the way, because I'm not talking OPEB. Pension obligation bonds are so much more interesting. So, you've got to decide how you're going to keep track. Worcester Regional, does not really track those kinds of things. We looked actually this year, we actually looked at how we could kind of segregate additional contributions. Some towns were talking about, can we make some, additional appropriation over and beyond the bill you send us? We've got, $100,000 kind of hanging around. I don't know how you do that, and we would like to, contribute, but we want to make sure, who wants to do that if it's going to be spread out over 100 other employers, right? So Worcester
Agree.
is not really set up at this point in time to do that. And when we looked at this possibility of, this town wanted to contribute more, it ended up being like, it wasn't what I think they originally thought, like $500,000 or a couple $100,000. It was like $10,000. So to kind of do all of this work to track those kinds of things, they kind of was like, well, when it's something more significant, we'll talk again. So this is what would happen in a regional system is, it's kind of all for one for all. You all pay your appropriations. They are somewhat based on your actual experience within the system. But at the end of the day, all the assets are pooled. And at the end of the day, Southborough being one of the member units, I can't recall the numbers off the top of my head. I wasn't prepared for the Worcester talk, but if the whole system is 65% funded, assets divided by the liabilities, the town of Southborough and every other employer within the system is also 65% funded. So there's no jiggling around of the assets. They're not really earmarked to any one employer at this time. It doesn't mean it can't be done.
Can you only bond the pension obligation? Can you not do OPEB?
I think that has to be a separate a separate bond. So that would apply only to you because this is your program, right?
That's our trust.
Yeah, OPEB is your program. It hasn't really gotten a lot of traction only because OPEB funding is not required by anybody. The pension funding, Chapter 32, when you get that bill from Worcester Regional, don't have too much to say about it. It's required by the statute. OPEB, the setting aside your funds in an OPEB trust is strictly a local option, and it's not required by anybody.
We owe more for OPEB than pension. Okay, last question, I promise, Andrew. Is there a magic rate we should start trying to know that that's where we really start looking at this seriously?
Pension obligation bonds, you mean?
Yeah, and interest rates, yeah.
Yeah, it's all in comparison to the investment return rate that is the assumption. I think it's 7.25 right now. It's really that spread, right? You're trying to arbitrage that spread. You're trying to borrow at some magic number. Maybe it's this is just an example. 4%. If the rates are at 4%, is that enough of an arbitrage and enough? Are you going to have enough savings borrowing at 4%, versus funding the Worcester Regional Retirement the way you've been funding it, which is through appropriations?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. What should that spread be? what's
I
the-
can't answer. Yeah, I don't
All
know.
right, we should really move
Okay.
back to,
Yeah.
Sorry, you have a bunch
I
of
started
finance
it, so
nerds
it's my
here.
fault, but
Well, this is, I mean, it's
Uh,
$5 million is what's on this balance sheet. It's-
No, I get it.
Big number potentially, but the bottom line for me is we still pursue the special act, gives us the flexibility. Sounds like there's a fair amount of work to do with Worcester Regional to make it work, but again, I think we need the flexibility, so let's keep going.
All right.
Questions, Kathy?
It's not a pressing issue for the next 6 months to a year, I don't think.
No.
Right.
The pension obligation bond, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of opinions on them. So you've probably heard some of the horror stories, right? Worcester, not Worcester Regional, Worcester, the city, took out pension obligation bonds, I want to say in the early 90s. They did not fare well, right? Their assets did not do well. So now you're done, you're investing, you're going in the market with this huge chunk of money, and you're hoping it's going to provide that investment return to pay the benefits, knock down your unfunded liability. But then as the assets lost money, those unfundeds continued to grow. So not only were they paying the pension obligation bonds off, they're also now paying increased appropriations. So that's the risk, right? That truly is the risk of these programs. So, all right, I will continue. So we do this valuation every other year for the evaluation of the OPEB program, where we're looking at liabilities. A liability on an OPEB plan is simply what is the present value of our expected payments that we're going to pay all your future retirees, current retirees. What are we paying for their health insurance out infinitum to, till the last man dies, literally. And then we're going to take the present value of that. We're going to compare it to any assets you have set aside. We're going to calculate some financial statement disclosure information and expense, net OPEB liability, as it's called. And then we also can, from that, develop any kind of funding kind of scheme or program you might be interested in. And we can talk a little bit about that as well. We're going to review all the assumptions and methods. We make many, many, many assumptions about the future. We're not just looking at, how much money you get set aside in the bank right now. We've got to figure out, if your current retirees, what health plan are they on? How are those health plans going to change in the future? We trend those things. Are those retirees, how long are they going to live? If they're covering a spouse as well, how long will the spouse live? That's just retiree side. Then you've got your active employees. Will, Joe actually retire from the town? And then if he does, will he elect coverage? So he could die, he could terminate, he could just transfer out of Southborough and go to another town and get on their OPEB program. So you guys are now off the hook. So there's a bunch of assumptions we've got to make, even to figure out if the guy is actually going to retire and actually elect coverage under the town's plans. So we're looking at all those assumptions and methods. We're making sure they're appropriate every year and looking at it. Are they reasonable? Do they conform to our actuarial standards of practice? As I mentioned, we can develop contributions kind of like we do on a pension system, right? We've got pension benefits. We've got to figure out what we need to pay for. We've got assets set aside for those. We are going to develop these appropriations. Well, an OPEB can do this exact same thing. We can come up with a funding model or a funding policy. Some policies are strictly, we're going to contribute this dollar amount, right? That's not really actuarial, but we could say, well, we can calculate some actuarial developed contribution, and you can compare it to what it is you actually are committed to, to contribute. And then at the end, we're going to develop financial statement disclosures. The ultimate purpose of our report is for your auditors to take these numbers from our report and include them in your financial statements. Next slide, please. So what happened in 2023? I mentioned that we only do evaluation every other year. So what do we do in the off year? Forgot to mention that. We do what's called a roll forward. We again look at your assets. That's not rolled forward. You can give us a statement that says on June 30, 2022, this is what we had in the bank. But on 2023, fiscal ending June 30, 23, we had not looked at your plans or anything or your people for 2 years. So it's really the 2022-23 events that occurred, but a huge change that was made effective July 1, 2023, and we did reflect it here, was that you did replace your Fallon and Tufts plans, and these are for what we call pre-Medicare retirees, right? Your Harvard Pilgrim plans replaced what was previously offered. Those still are considered OPEB, the retirees who aren't yet Medicare eligible, right? So we've got that group of retirees who retire prior to 65. They go on these plans, those changed. In addition, all of your 65 and older or Medicare eligible retirees, we had a replacement of those plans as well with the Aetna Medicare Advantage plan. We kind of try to estimate what an impact of that is, because we don't really know what the person would have elected because they're no longer offered. So we make a guess. So what we do is we look at the plans in place that were in place before. We look at the new plans and we try to work backwards, and we say, well, if the person was on the HMO, has elected the Harvard Pilgrim HMO, chances are you probably would have elected the Fallon HMO, and vice versa. The Medicare Advantage plan ended up being, I think, the only plan offered. So that was a pretty easy change for us to analyze. We run under both scenarios, under the old plans, under the new, and it actually dropped your total liability by about $10 million. I mean, that's very significant when you started at $45 million, right? So big event, big impact to your liability. Again, I mentioned that we review all of the assumptions. The most important assumption is this discount rate. It is that rate that we apply to all the future benefit payments, discounted back to the current. So, payments made in a year from now will be discounted to today for 1 year. The benefit payments we expect to be made 10 years from now, they'll be discounted to the current over 10 years. The way we calculate the discount rate, it is sort of prescribed by the GASB, where we follow the GASB standard. It is based on two pieces. You have assets set aside in your trust, and those assets are not just sitting in a checking account or a cash savings account. They are invested in the market. There is a long-term rate expectation that portfolio will return. We're looking at that. We're looking at all the asset classes of that OPEB trust, and we are applying what we think in the future, many, many years out into the future, what the annual rate of return would be. We actually decrease that, and it is kind of in line with many of the surveys. A lot of stuff has been happening. In our report toward the back, we have this chart that kind of shows all of our discount rate assumptions, and they have.
Could you comment on, so the discount rate went down by just about 0.45%,
Yep.
and the long-term rate went down by 0.65%. So that's opening up a gap there in terms of present values.
Yeah. So how we do this is, I'll try to make this. I'm going to go slow because it's got to think about this. What we do is we are going to look at your OPEB trust first of all, and we're going to say, what do you have in the trust? And can you actually fund the benefits today that are going to be paid this year? Year one. Do you have enough money in the bank to fund year one benefit payments? If you do, you get to discount those benefit payments by the long-term rate of return, because it's technically the assets that are going to be paying out if you were paying out, but you're not at this point. This is the model, right? We're going to discount year one's benefit payments. Now we're going to take your OPEB trust, your $3 million, and we're going to add contributions to it. We're going to add investment return. We're going to subtract off some benefit payments. We're going to come up with year two balance. And we're going to say, of the benefit payments we expect to be paid in the second year, do you have enough money in the bank? But also, you're telling me that, you know, you're going to make a $250,000 contribution to the trust. So that's why your funding policy is very important when we look at this. So now we have this model that year over year over year, we're projecting the assets, but then we're also looking at the benefit payments. And every year we say, do you have enough? Yes. Discount at long-term rate of return. Once you run out of money, you've got a discount at it's a high quality municipal bond rate. That increased a little bit, 9 basis points this past year. So bond rate probably takes, we're probably using the bond rate for a whole lot of discounting. And I've got your report open on my other screen here. I was going to like really quickly look at how many years you actually had assets hanging around. And then, you know, I mean, there weren't many years that you didn't have assets hanging around because you have $3 million in the bank, but you're also committing to a future, contributions. So the goal is for you to hit the long-term rate of return, right? So that all benefits are going to be well secured based on, I mean, you're only 6-point-something% funded. Sounds like terrible, but it's not when we model how this is going to go out into the future, right? So the goal is to get that long-term rate of return. We're now at 6% based on your investment policy statement, where your assets actually are invested. But there were a few years that you, quote, ran out of money, so we had to discount those at the bond rate. So with that decrease in the discount rate, lower discount rates, higher liabilities, we had to add another $2.8 million in liability. So plan changes decreased by 10, total liability like for the discount rate change. Does that
Thank you.
answer your question? So it's like, it's
it
not
sounds like
kind of
a-
a 1-for-1. Like, it's not really a 1-for-1. We come up with the one single rate that does that process that I tried to explain. I hope I did. In our
I think I get it.
Yeah, in our report, if you kind of follow along, it's Appendix A in our big report. The first table says, like, what do you got for contributions? The second table is, what do you got for assets? What do you have for benefit payments? And the third table says, do I have money in the bank to cover this year's benefit payments? Yes or
I
no?
think we can wait for this to.
Right. So in our report,
Yeah.
Brian will be able to provide that to you. You can kind of see how it all kind of works. Next slide, please. All right. No, I'm not going over every one of these numbers, but this is kind of what I was saying. We've got trust assets. You had almost an 8% return this year for the fiscal ending June 30, 2023. We're comparing that ending balance of a little over $3 million to your total OPEB liability. So total OPEB liabilities, even if you do nothing, if we did a roll forward, you wouldn't have any experience. But you're going to always add to your total OPEB liability just from another year of benefits earned by your employees. You will subtract off benefit payments, but like a mortgage, there's always interest, right? We got a time value of money. We got to bring those forward a year. But here's like kind of the big nut I was telling you, benefit changes minus almost $10 million. That was the impact of making those changes that you did on July 1 of 2023. An experience is going to be maybe employees left, terminated, and were replaced by younger people. So younger people tend to have lower liabilities than an older folk that is closer to retirement. Maybe the benefits you were offering before didn't go up the way we thought they would have using our assumptions. the biggest one generally is our trend. We cannot predict with, I'm going to say pretty much 0% accuracy. We can't do it, what we think the health insurance rates are going to be a year or 2 or 3 years from now. And we're trying to project this out till the 20-year-old actually dies at age 110. So, we're trying to establish these assumptions. They really will never materialize. So there's always going to be an experience gain or loss. We've seen a lot of experience gains because of the lack of premium increases. We sometimes don't believe that it's the premiums that aren't going up. We sometimes think, well, maybe the plans are being changed over and retirees might be picking up more of the costs. So there's all kinds of things that go into this experience number that that impacts your liabilities as well. As I
But
mentioned
Linda, why are
before-
you focusing on the 10 million when it went from 50 to 45? With all the intervening things that affected that. Are you saying that the changes in the insurance programs alone caused that $10 million?
Yes.
Mhm.
Remember, I heard a lady at the beginning of the meeting talk about a savings. That's probably what you were going to save maybe this year. We're projecting somebody who is currently on that Medicare plan, he's going to get that payment with trend, right? That's not going to stay flat. That cost of that plan will increase over time. But he's going to be collecting that for the rest of his life, his spouse potentially, all of the active employees as well. So you didn't really just make a benefit change for today, tomorrow, or 5 years from now. You made the benefit change. We looked at that benefit change as impacts forever until you come up with another benefit change.
But
So
this doesn't
is-
reflect the most recent benefit change we made, because that's 1/1/24, where we have gone to, we've changed it a lot as far as retiree programs. So we may have this number hopefully again next year, maybe.
What was changed on 1/1/24?
So I'm looking at our town treasurer. So we went to basically a single carrier, Aetna, and made lots of changes. So it's saving.
That's in the report, right?
That's part of this. Yeah. So back 2 slides, I think it was, we mentioned that your Harvard Pilgrim replaced the plans previously offered by Fallon and, sorry, I got to go back. And also the Medicare Advantage plan replaced your previously offered.
But this is as of 1/1/24 that I'm describing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that's
knew
not-
about it. The benefits were effective. I mean, you even though on that day the benefits will be changed, we knew about it.
Oh,
and
okay, sorry.
We
Andrew.
had, so we actually recognized it kind of, maybe we recognized it early. I think I went on your website to find out some of the details of the change.
How much of of that $9.8 million is a function of changes in the programs versus changes in the discount rate assumptions?
The discount rate assumption change would be in that $4.4 million
Yeah,
plus.
elsewhere.
That's an
That's all
assumption
program
change. So we've got,
changes, $10 million.
we always have 3 pieces that we look at. The first 4 items here are always going to be there. The beginning balance, obviously. Benefits earned are the benefits, every active employee, when in actuarial, we're sort of trying to recognize these liabilities in a systematic way. An actuarially funded way is you've got a liability of the past, but there's a piece that is earned every year by your people who aren't yet retired yet. They've earned another piece of their benefit. They got a year older. There's another benefit that they're actually earning. So benefits earned will be there. What we paid out in benefits will always be there, and an interest on the obligation. That's always there. The 3 things that may not be there are the next 3. Benefit changes. Those, in terms of GASB and accounting standards, you will recognize those on your financial statements immediately because you had control over them. The plan sponsor was able to do something and create those changes. So that's generally not here. Benefit changes do not happen a lot. right? This year, for some reason, they have been happening a real lot across the Commonwealth. There's been a lot of movement to different plans. So that's a benefit change. Truly, here's an example of a benefit change. If you provided a 25% cost sharing to your retirees, and you decided maybe you'll grandfather some people in, but you're going to move to 30%, right? That's a benefit change that would also save you money because the retirees would be picking up more. Another benefit change might be you want to add dental. So now that's a plus, right? You're going to change the benefit. You are strictly, you truly are offering something different to your retirees than you offered before. That would be a benefit change. The experience is going to be things like the plans didn't increase, or they decreased, they decreased, or they increased a lot more than we thought they were. That's something that happened that we did not anticipate, right? It could be more retirees lived than we expected. That's going to cause a loss because now we're still paying out retirees who we thought, we're basing all this on the actuarial mortality tables. And so we expect X many people to die every year. And if they don't, that's an experience change. So that kind of thing, things that we make an assumption about, but it doesn't really materialize. An assumption change is us going in and saying, we were discounting before at 6.05%. And now we're discounting at 5.59. We are changing one of our future expectations. That's an assumption change. We might change that trend rate I was talking about. How do we think medical plans are going to increase in the future? We might change the mortality tables. People are living longer. Studies come out all the time. So we're always looking at that and making sure that we don't have a huge deviation between what we expected and what actually happened. So we're truly making assumption changes. We are, going back to our model, and we're tweaking a future possible event. Does that make sense on that right-hand column?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. And that right-hand column, by the way, that's all Brian. Brian gives us all the retirees, what plans they're in, what gender they are, when they were born, do they have a covered spouse? He also gives us information on all the active employees. So this is the model. This is most of the work on the right-hand side. This is coming up with the liability based on your census data, your plans that you're offering, and all that, and the provisions of the plan too, like what do your retirees pay toward the premium compared to the town? So that's all that. On the left-hand side, it's a statement, it's a bank statement that we look at. We calculate a rate of return so that we can let you know, how you doing compared to our assumption, which is 6 on the long-term rate of return. So you had a little gain there, $35,000.
So Linda, if the first 4 are always going to be there, right?
Yep.
Okay, and the last 3 might not.
Yeah, so next year when we do a roll forward, this was called a full valuation. When I told you Brian has to submit, I was going to use the word begrudgingly because everybody hates submitting the data. It's hard. It's a lot of work to compile all this stuff that we need. But next year he doesn't have to do that. He just has to give us the left-hand side. So there'll be no more benefit changes. You're done. There'll be no experience because we roll forward this number based on, expectations 100% being met. The only thing that might be there in a roll forward is an assumption change. And that's again, because we have to look at them and we might say, we still aren't real thrilled about our long-term rate of return, or more realistically, the bond rate changes every day. There's it's based on a bond buyer index, every single day, but on this disclosure date, that's the day we look up the bond rate.
But
So
if the 4 stick, right, we aren't even coming close to eating into this with the 250. Because benefits earned, that's not going to change that much, right? Benefits paid probably is not going to change that much. I don't know about the interest in the TOL, but it's going to be positive, whatever it is. So the number, that 49, is going to always go up a lot more than the $250,000 that we're putting into it, right? If you don't have
yeah. So if you were, say you were actuarially actuarially funding this, you know, there could be, generally what happens is in an actuarial funding method, benefits earned would be part of your policy so that you're not falling behind. You're always paying for the new benefits earned, right? Every person you hire, there's a cost to hiring those people. So benefits earned would be part of your policy. And then we've got, you know, $45 million minus $3 million that you hope is going to grow as you contribute, as you put in more. That differential would be amortized over some predefined term, you know, period of time, 30 years, following year it's 29, then 28. So it is just like on pensions, you're chiseling away at, you know, not only paying the normal costs. I don't know how savvy you are on the pension funding stuff from Worcester Regional, but they have a funding schedule. It's made up of benefits earned. We call it the normal cost or the service cost. So at the normal cost, we include administrative expenses to run Worcester Regional. That, I'm going to say, is the insignificant part of your bill. The very significant part of the bill is amortizing the unfunded liability. And Massachusetts statute says you've got to have that done by 2040. PERAC, the oversight people, say, but we'd like you to do 2035. So let's do the math. 2035, we're in 2024, 11 years from now, right? Did I do that math right? That is very stressful on many cities and towns.
Yes, it is.
The period of time is very small to get those unfunded liabilities all paid off.
I
So
just thought the 250 was going to get us there at some point, but it's not.
No,
I'm not, it's getting worse and worse. So it's going to take getting the pension funded and then taking that money and putting it in this to even start whacking away at it.
we did that to basically start chewing into it, but I don't, at least my expectation was
I don't
never
think we're even
that
chewing into it,
that was
Susan.
going to do the job.
We're-
Yeah.
yeah, in our report, and I can't remember if I have a slide, so I'll keep going, but in our report, we do develop what we call an actuarially determined employer contribution. It's kind of what I said. It's this 30-year amortization to get rid of your $45 million unfunded. It's the service cost or normal cost. We're looking at like $4.5 million. But don't think, oh my God, we have to pay $4.5 million. You already pay like $1.5 million to your retiree program, right? You are funding more than $250,000.
I understand we're paying as we go as far as what,
Not
because
enough.
I get
Right,
that.
so you've got
So-
like $1.8 million technically going in. If you really wanted to fund this thing to a 100% funded ratio, you would be needing to, in grand total right now, put in like $4.5 million. That includes what you're funding for the benefit itself.
On top of the pension.
Now, some people are looking at this. I think I talked about this in this venue recently, you know, when last I was here. You know, Worcester is expected to be fully funded. Again, I didn't prepare my Worcester regional stuff. I probably should look at the funding schedule. 2035 or 2036, I can't remember the year. So what some OPEB clients of ours ask us to do is sort of build this model of funding, saying, we really can only do $250,000 a year, or maybe we can increase that by, you know, 3%, 2%, whatever it is. But here's 250. And when I hit that full funding date for retirement, what monies are going to be kind of like released? Like, what do I, you know, because not the entire appropriation, remember, to Worcester Regional is not going to go to zero. Just, you know, keep that in mind. When we are fully funded, you still have to pay the normal cost, right? The cost of benefits earned by your employees every year. And you also have to keep Worcester Regional's lights on so that when you go to retire, there'll be somebody there to calculate your benefit. So there's admin expenses and it's a big system. So, you know, it's not insignificant. So we fund those on an annual basis as well. All right. So the model would be 250, 250, 250, 250 for like 11 years. And then for you guys, you know, I don't know, I'm making this up. It could be like $2 million that you divert all. Some of the models we've done, people have said, hey, can you show us like 75% of what we're going to, you know, save from retirement in 2032? And then, you know, we'll do this, send the 25% somewhere else, but whatever. So we then kind of keep building that on. You are already funding pension. Let's now divert it to OPEB and see how much, you know, and it's pretty surprising how quickly that released money can do a real, make a dent, a true dent in OPEB.
It's gonna be a long time before we get off this treadmill, though,
It is.
basically.
And I think one of the other things sounding familiar that I talked about this, PERAC does compile all of the information from the 350 cities and towns in Massachusetts. So like they have your numbers here. They'll have your accrued liability, they'll have your assets, your funded ratio. You know, in the sixes, you're six, pardon me, you are 6.71% funded as of June 30, 2023. That is not bad. Like you probably think, oh my gosh, it seems like we'll never get there. There are many, many communities with a zero in that number, right? Who aren't funding at all. There are some who say they'll, you know, put in 10 grand. I have a client, we were just working on a report, like they put in like $10,000 5 years ago and they haven't put anything in since. So it's like, okay. So, you know,
We won't be here.
it's a long-term program. This is not going away unless, you know, I think some people have speculated about that, you know, is it contractually sacred? Chapter 32 on the retirement stuff is a lot more protected, I would say, than chapter 32B. But there's, again, no funding requirement. So, I mean, the only thing you're funding, which is required, I think, is that you have to pay at least 50% of the cost of the program, right, for your retirees. You can't charge them more than 50%. So that is statutorily required. Whether the program, you know, is protected or not, I don't know. But so some people get a little worried about pre-funding to OPEB trusts because one of the criteria of that trust is it must be used exclusively for retiree medical or I can't say retiree medical, retiree post-employment benefit program other than pensions.
I think we're still in what I think is as in the prudent zone here, but we certainly are a long way from the finish line.
Yep.
So
Actuarial funding, I guess, except if I were talking here and I had just started my career 3 years ago, I might see it, but it is a very long-term obligation, you know, it's long-term because you're continually replacing, you know, your people who are retirement age, they're retiring, your people are moving up, you're replacing with younger. I mean, it's a program that is continually, you know, maturing as we go, and it will never go away. So some people kind of say, well, what is the point of, you know, full funding? Well, to me, like to fully fund the way we're funding pensions, I don't think is prudent for OPEB, because why should there be an end date in which you are 100% funding? Every year we look at this, there's a gain and a loss, because we are never going to hit our assumptions perfectly. And the assets aren't going to return 6% the way we said them. I can guarantee you that. So what do you do with those gains and losses, right? If you're stuck with amortizing them only through like 2035 or 2040 forever and ever and ever, and then what do we do when we get to 2039? We only have 1 year to like deal with this. So, you know, there's ways to set up something. I mean, most of our clients, to be honest with you, do have a policy like you guys have, a fixed dollar amount. Some might say, you know, increase that, or some people are adding, every time they add a new person, they're funding for that person the normal cost. Because by the way, a brand new person has no like liability because they have no past. They come in strictly with a normal cost. So the theory is if you can fund a normal cost for them every year when you hire them, then the theory is that dollar amount accumulates to their retirement age and then is sitting in the pot, and then it will be used to pay his or her benefit for the rest of his life.
All right, at this point, I think just so that we can get through the rest of the
We're doing
presentation,
time-wise,
maybe
yeah.
as the board, we should just hold off on questions until the end, because we're starting to run barely behind schedule on our agenda so far. And I know
Yeah,
we gotta
all
get
right.
to Tony
So
and a
we're
couple
really-
other things.
Yeah, we're wrapped up. I've already talked, I think, about most of these slides. You contribute 250,000, you're 6.7% funded. You've got your trust. I mean, this is everything I've already talked about, how we get the member data. This is really all just, it's from our, what we call section 5 in our report. It's everything that you offer in terms of your plan. These are the highlights. Medical, is obviously going to be the biggest nut. We've got life insurance. I mean, here we're talking about 21 cents a month. It's really a drop in the bucket for all of this other stuff. Dental, you also provide. So all of those things. If you have any retirees who are over 65, not eligible for Medicare, there will be a pretty significant cost for that person because they're staying on the non-Aetna plan, right? So that can get very expensive for them and for the rest of the folks. There are people who didn't go on Medicare on time when they did, because state law now says you got to push them onto Medicare if they're eligible, and then you have to put them on like the Aetna Advantage plan. There's a penalty that is assessed. You've probably heard of it, the late enrollment penalty. That's why they say when you turn 65, contact Medicare and sign up. The penalty actually is paid by the town. That's state law. So that's part of OPEB. So there's all this stuff that's part of the OPEB program that is what we value. The assumptions in order of their importance, the discount rate, the healthcare trend rates, already talked about all that. And then all those demographic, when are they going to die? When are they actually going to retire? Or are they going to terminate? Or are they going to die when they're, young and still working? And are they going to actually elect coverage? And are they going to cover a spouse? All those are the assumptions that we look at every year to refine our model. The financial statements is what Tony would pull out of our reports and work with you to get onto your financial statements. So we're at $42.2 million at June 30, 2023. There was an income, meaning negative expense this year. And that really is the nature of, if you remember when I said the benefit changes, the plan sponsor did have full control over that, immediately recognizable. So that's what I wrote. Benefit changes are recognized immediately. The $10 million gain, it flipped your expense to income. I would never advise anybody to use the GASB 75 expense as a funding model. As you can see, very volatile. You'd have a very hard time trying to figure out what are we doing here. And that's it. It's kind of like we have a report, and anybody have any questions, I'd be happy to through Brian, if you want to ask him for anything, I'd be happy to answer anything that might come up.
Okay,
I'm done.
all right.
Can I make one comment, Andrew?
Yes,
I'm not an accountant or an actuary, but I think I understand the math behind this pretty well. And the thing that strikes me is the assumptions, or the summary data, very sensitive to the assumptions. You can change an interest rate or discount rate by 1%, you get 15, 20% swing in the liability there. I don't think, as Linda suggests, I don't think any of us has a crystal ball. So to me, you go through the process that we've gotten here. It seems very thorough. Make your best estimates of what's going to happen and then continue to do that periodically. And you don't lose a lot of sleep over trying to get it too precisely modeled. And I think we're in reasonably good shape from a standpoint of prudent management. And beyond that, I don't tend to lose a lot of sleep about this. So I think we're on a pretty good track.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. It's very sensitive to the discount rate solutions.
And
I think that the
investment
takeaway is we're making progress.
Yeah.
They actually show us in here. They gave us an example of 1% up, 1%
Yeah,
down as far as what the
And
impact was
healthcare-
big.
Healthcare costs, discount rate, investment rates, et cetera. All those things, substantial impact, these kind of time frames. So
All right.
okay. So one agenda issue here. And Tony, this is before we get to you. We have later on our select board agenda, we have an item where it involves a joint meeting with another committee of which this board is a quorum, okay? And we had posted a concurrent meeting of that board. It's the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee for 7 o'clock. We have about probably less than 5 to 10 minutes of business to do. Yeah, okay.
The minutes.
So what I suggest is that we'll call to order the meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, take up the minutes. And then I think we can have a very quick discussion of the proposed warrant article, and then we'll just,
Adjourn.
yes,
Okay.
okay.
All right. So I call to order the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee
Thank you, Linda.
at 7:30. And the first item on the agenda is the approval and release of the executive session minutes from December 27th and January 10th. Is there a motion to do so?
I have just
You,
two quick edits on the January 10,
yeah,
which is to label them as executive session minutes.
yep, I got that one.
And then where it says a motion was made to adjourn, the motion was made to adjourn at 9:45.
Yep. Already written down.
Okay, so I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Wait.
All those opposed? Okay. There's also a motion to release the minutes since these are executive session and the matter is now closed.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Um,
So
so and then on the other, the topic is proposed fall town meeting warrant article regarding organization of affordable housing committees. That's the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee and SHOPC, and use of CPC funds for community housing. So we were hoping to have a joint meeting with CPC. Last week, it didn't happen because of an issue with a posting of a agenda. So we'll just kind of postpone a kind of a substantive discussion of the issue, but it might be beneficial if rather than have a delay to have a joint meeting of maybe 4 different boards, if between the select board and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, we selected 2 people to act as kind of the liaisons with a representative from CPC and SHOPC to start to talk about a kind of a consensus article to bring to fall town meeting. Does that sound
I
good?
think that makes sense. And I think that, I guess I would reinforce that this is a continuation of an idea that was proposed originally by Ms. Braccio before she left the select board to provide some flexibility for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee to act more quickly on housing opportunities. And she had suggested that other towns such as Westboro, and we've also seen places like Lexington, Arlington, have actually combined these functions in ways that make them much more effective operationally. And so I think that was the intent that we touched on in a couple of previous conversations about it. And that's my understanding of where this warrant article would head in terms of creating one committee that combines these functions. Is that consistent
Yes,
with what others
yes,
see?
yes. And then, I'm sorry if I missed, if you also mentioned this part of it, but it would be great to also work out the,
Transfer.
yes, the
funds,
transfer with the
yeah,
CPC.
CPC, right.
Yeah,
It should be part of this.
it really should be, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the mechanics are, we will have to go to town meeting as I went back and with the help of town council and Jim Haggerty, sorted through exactly what was approved. And so we would either have to change the composition of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Right now, it would have to have, at least town council advises would have to have at least one member of this board on it.
Right.
I think we need to be somewhat circumspect, given that that committee has substantial authority, and I'm cautious about vesting that much authority without, careful supervision
Well,
by people who have been elected by the
But
voters.
the way other towns have done that, Al, is to have limits on spending without select board approval.
Town council was frowning on that, but I can certainly
Yeah.
chat with them some more.
So let's not get into
Okay,
details
yeah.
tonight. We know we want to do it. We
Yep.
know it needs to be done. Let's just figure out who the 2 people
Yep.
are that
So
are.
I'd be interested.
Yeah, as would I.
Okay. Does that make sense?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Al and I would be the representatives of the select board and or the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee.
Either
Yeah.
one.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Alright.
we'll reach out and try to see if SHOPC and CPC will also
Participate.
nominate someone. I expect that Lisa probably would want to do it on behalf of CPC.
And I wouldn't think you're going to have to recreate the wheel here. There's
Nope.
examples in other towns use them.
Yep.
You know,
All right.
best,
All right.
best practices.
Okay, so I think that takes care of this from the select board perspective,
All right.
okay.
Then is there a motion to adjourn the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee?
So move.
All,
Oh,
all those in favor?
I'll second it.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right, that's, oh, I think we may have set a record.
Fantastic.
okay. So
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people come in here. Is this for the sidewalks item, most people? Okay. So for that, we are in the middle of some other business. It's probably going to take, I would say, at least half an hour,
Yeah.
45 minutes before we get to the sidewalk discussion. But once we're there, I know also our DPW superintendent is in the online audience. So what I'll do is I'll just advance that on the agenda so we can address that immediately. And then everyone who is here for that, we can get you out of here. So you don't have to wait till the complete end of the meeting. All right. Okay. So the next item on our select board agenda is presentation from Tony Roselli regarding our FY 23 audit.
Is he here? There he is.
He's here.
Hi, Tony. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my audio.
We can hear
see
you.
me? Can you see me?
I can see a little picture of you, not
Picture.
the big
You're,
picture.
you're
Yeah.
stuck.
Just a pic-
You're not moving.
Just a picture, huh?
Yeah,
Little
you're
picture.
smiling.
Oh, well, I guess we'll have to go out. I've got, oh, video, there we go. It was on your end. Is
Wait a minute, that doesn't look like the picture.
There you go. Now we can
that
see
it?
you.
Yep, I'm here. How's everyone?
Great.
So I was, yeah, when Brian says we'll get Linda right on and we'll be out in 10 minutes, I know that never happens. So, that's, Linda can tell you a lot. So, it was actually a good presentation though. So I enjoyed listening to it. A couple of things. I did I prepared a presentation that I provided to the town accountants, the treasurers, the finance directors all throughout the state on pension obligation bonds. So I can do that for you at some point, not tonight, but I can kind of go through the whole presentation if you'd like that. I've worked
Give
with
it to us.
I worked with hedge fund managers. I worked with bond counsel, with the bond rating people. I worked with PERAC. And so probably know more about this than I ever wanted to know. And but came back with a lot of good things that I'd be happy to share. I don't know if Brian, if you were at my discussion when I presented it to the treasurers last year. But it went over really well. And you know, so one of the things you've got to know about this is, first of all, you're in Worcester County, and the way the law works is you're supposed to be doing this on a payroll basis. So basically, that's taking your payroll versus Winchendon's payroll versus Westminster's payroll, and they're figuring out what your liability is based on the payroll. What Middlesex County does is they do it on an actuarial based. So they have each town is done on an actuarial based assumption, not a payroll based. And so you're allowed to over contribute to Middlesex County and you get credit for it. So I talked to PERAC. I said, how does Worcester County and Barnstable County and all these other counties, why are they on payroll and why is Middlesex on, why is Middlesex on this actuarial based? And what PERAC said is we will allow it if the board votes on it and approves it. Even though it's not consistent with the law, we will allow it. So if you do have any interest in, say, over contributing your pension assessment, the first place I'd start is with the board and say, hey, has anyone thought about going to this system of calculating the liability like Middlesex County does? And and kind of start a conversation with maybe some of the other communities in Worcester County and say, hey, does this make more sense? So that if we have an extra $1 million and we want to overpay our obligation, can we do it? Right now, Linda's correct. It's getting spread through, I think Middle Worcester has 93 members. So it's getting spread over 93 members. And it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And the other thing you've got to be aware of is if you do decide at some point to do pension obligation bonds, those are taxable bonds. So right now, a AAA rating is about 3.4%. You got to add about a point to that. So you're up around 4.3% on a taxable bond. And if you're paying your assessment at 7%, you've got a 2%, 2 to 3% arbitrage situation there. In my experience and looking at what other towns and cities have done in the past, the Worcester one that was really bad way back just before .com blew up, I think you need at least 4 to 4.5% before you say, hey, it's a good idea to go ahead and try to do this. Because you get one blip like the pandemic, or like I said, the .com bomb back in 2000 that we all remember so well. And it just said Worcester County only had 2% of arbitrage, and it got wiped out like the first year, and they've just caught up. So, so those are just some things I wanted to at least add to Linda's conversation. But yeah, if you guys are interested, we can set something up like maybe in a month or so, and I can go through the entire presentation for you just to let you know what's there, how it works, what's involved.
I think that sounds
definitely
good.
don't have the time to do it tonight, but let me know if that makes sense.
Good.
Tony, one quick question. Andrew's gonna get mad at me if I talk too much, but why are the bonds taxable?
Oh, because they originally did it untaxed in California 30 years ago. Everybody caught on very quickly that was a great way to avoid paying federal income taxes on the interest for those bonds. And
Yeah,
so
I believe that's
the
how it
IRS stepped
works.
in and said, we're not going to allow that.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah.
later. I don't-
Yeah, no, thanks for that color. I wasn't sure why either, but they are definitely a non-taxable.
California found that loophole and people got a real tax advantage for buying those things when they were tax exempt. So people who bought the bonds as municipal tax exempt bonds didn't have to pay income tax on that.
That's true of any muni bonds. I don't see what the difference is. We'll talk about it later. Let's not get it.
One of the things I've advised my towns to do, one thing I've advised to do, which can't hurt, is get the legislation that allows you
Exactly.
to
We're
do
working on
We
that.
did the first
Yeah.
step. We had a town meeting, approve it. We just gotta put
Put
together.
it through the legislature. Yeah.
special
Yeah, it's
act.
got to go through the legislature, because what happened during the pandemic, the rates went down to 0.9%, and even the taxables were under 2%.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
I had about 5 clients that already had the legislature in place, and I'm like, do it. This is not going to last. But they were more concerned. Obviously, at that time, there were people dying. There were, safety issues. It wasn't really at the top of their agenda of trying to get something like that done. But, you get that black swan event that just knocks down those rates for like a 60-day window period of time. And you want to be in shape to be able to do something. Even with your OPEB, you would need special legislation on OPEB as well, if that's something you were interested in doing right now. There is no town in Massachusetts or city that does an OPEB obligation bond, but you'd have to get special legislation for that. But have it in place. And if you do get that black swan where those rates plummet, you can take advantage of it. And a lot of towns just weren't able to do that. North Andover was able to catch the tail end of the rates before they started going up. So they got them at in the 2s somewhere, like 2.2 or 3. And they even dropped their discount rate to 5.9. They were ultra conservative. They dropped it to 5.9. They went back 100 years and they said, what is the lowest rate of return in any 20-year period in the last 100 years? A rolling 20-year period. Someone did the whole analysis for them, and they said, let's use that as our discount rate. Let's be ultra conservative. So they've done quite well because they almost timed the market. What they did was they dollar cost averaged in when they did the bond. So they didn't participate in that big drop when Russia and Ukraine and all that stuff was happening, but they participated in the gain on the back end because all the funds are invested now. So they've done quite well so far with that with that POB. So it can definitely work. Quincy and Brockton, the same thing. So,
Let's talk more about it later. We got to keep moving here, right? Andy?
yeah, no worries. I just wanted to give you some color on that. I know there were a lot of questions.
Oh, this is a great discussion, but
we
Yeah,
gotta
so
stick to the
Brian, I
audit.
don't know if you want to queue up the PowerPoint that I did. Okay, let's just go on. We can keep moving. This is just, yeah, we can go through this real quick. Yeah, just so I can comply with my standards, just got to let you know what an audit is. It's performed in accordance with GAGAS. Go to the next slide, Bri. Next one. Okay, right here. Just want to preface my presentation. Just what's an audit? It's performed in accordance with GAGAS, which is a government auditing standards. It's called the Yellow Book, and that's all created down in Washington. Basically, they piggyback the AICPA. So we have to follow those standards when we do your audit. It requires a review of internal control over major transactions, and those are your receipts, your disbursements, and your payroll. So we do a lot of testing in those three particular areas. Requires risk assessment and enhanced procedures if we identify where there's some particular areas of risk. If you have over $750,000 in federal financial assistance, which has happened now, I think every year since we've taken over the audit, it wasn't before that, you have to have what's called an extra single audit, which is a federal audit. And then finally, when we're done with our procedures, we're going to issue a clean opinion versus a qualified opinion. Qualified is if we have problems. Happy to say we had no problems. So we did issue a clean opinion, and that all falls under Statement on Auditing Standards number 115. So if there's no questions on that slide, we can move to the reserves. Reserve balances, you can see, are continuing to go up, which support your AAA rating. This year, they're up around, they're in the sixes now, 6.3. You were just over 5 in the last 2 years, so you took another leg up. If you go to the next slide, those reserves, how they compare to the S&P metric. The high metric is 15. You guys are at about 10, which is not a bond rating killer because you have so many other good things happening in Southborough. They like your property values, they like your assessed value, they like your demographics, what your employment base is. So there's a bunch of other things that they really like in Southborough that offset. This is a killer in some communities. If you're not in a community that has a very good standing and you're under the 15%, you're probably not going to get the AAA. You guys are still at AAA despite that. So, and you're right above the state average, which is around 10%. So I think you're in a good spot on your reserves. So as we said, your reserves increased from 9.8. Oh, and the reserve ratio is your reserves divided by your total expenditures. And your reserves include your undesignated fund balance plus your stabilization. Your undesignated fund balance is basically what your free cash is. So if you take your free cash, your stabilization, and you divide that by your expenses, you went from 9.4% to 10.8%. What drove that? Your local receipts exceeded forecast by 2.2 million. Your expenditures were under by 0.8. So you had a $3 million positive, which was offset by some planned uses of free cash of about 1.7. So you ended up a little bit to the black. The ratio is a little bit higher than the state average. I have approximates in here because it's right in that ballpark. And like I said, it's a tier 2, which is the 8 to 15%. So next slide, unless there's any questions. And I kind of showed how your bond rating grade gets worked up. And you're all 1s and 2s. And you've got some 1s. Your economy is good because you're very close to Boston and Worcester. So you're getting good grades for that. You get a 1. Your management score is a 2, and that's, again, this is on a scale of 1 to 5. Your budgetary flexibility and budget performances are 2s, and your liquidity and your debt are both 1s. So there's a good mix there, enough to get you to the 1.5 that gets you the AAA. You don't want to slip up in any of these areas. So just maintaining where you are here, we'll keep that AAA rating in play. So how do we do this? Well, conserve free cash for one-time items, basically snow removal, that's above and beyond what you budget, or some capital expenditures. Make efforts to continue to replenish free cash. So I recommend that you forecast revenues conservatively. Enhance revenue wherever you can. A lot of towns I'm noticing haven't really gone in and looked at what they're charging for little local charges and receipts and things. And when they do, they find out, wow, this hasn't changed in 25, 30 years. It's nickels and dimes, but it adds up. So I tell my towns, hey, do a scan of what you're charging, survey the nearby communities, and maybe you can get an extra couple of bucks on your free cash if they haven't changed in a long time. Monitor your budget aggressively, which you've been doing, which would turn funds back to surplus. Continue to prepare your long-term financial projections. Enforce your financial reserve policy, and continue with your OPEB funding. You know, I listened to your discussion. You know, the 250. When I look at your peers, the communities around you, you're right there. So you're not doing worse. You're not doing much better. But like Linda said, you're not in a bad spot. If you have extra money to put in OPEB, it doesn't hurt. But you're not in a bad spot. So OPEB, and we can cut this real quick. Your liability actually went down, and Linda explained why. You had a 10 million positive on your assumptions, but your discount rates and some of the other things took it down 5 or 6 million. So your net reduction was 4 million. One of the other things that I don't think she spoke about, your investment income was really good, 221,000 versus a loss of 400,000 in the prior year. So you had a $621,000 turnaround. That's about 20% of the plan assets. So that impacted things also, the recovery in the market. Discount rate 5.6, got about 3 million in the fund. And your average age of employees is creeping up. It's 48 at this point. So that's putting some stress on the valuation as well. Just jump in if you have any questions at all. GASB 68, that's your pension liability. Again, we don't have to go crazy on this. One thing I will highlight is Worcester County is back below 50. So it's been a really poorly funded system that's had some, you know, it hasn't done all the right things investment-wise. And I don't know if it's the mix of communities where it can't assess at the proper levels way back. It had started to catch up. With the drop in the markets in 22, it took a hit. I'm expecting that to pop back up with the 23 valuations, hopefully back above or close to 60%. Very low compared to state averages. And like I said, expected to increase in 23 due to more robust conditions.
Hey, Tony?
Yeah.
Question, this is Sam. They underwent some organizational stress last year. They had a president who was basically forced to resign and a new person come in there. Is that new person, do you think, likely to turn some of this around in terms of the fund performance?
What I usually find is that when there is turnover like that, this happened in Essex County a few years ago, that you usually do start to see better performance. I think the biggest problem was they were behind the curve. They were at like in the 30s not too long ago. So right. This goes back, the problem stems 10 or 12 years ago. And it's so hard to dig out of that because you have to increase your assessment so much just to catch up, because the market is going to be the same whether you're Essex County or whether you're Worcester County or whether you're Middlesex County. The market is going to be up or down 1%. Most of them, a lot of them are going to Prim, which has been a nice 7% to 9% vehicle. It's done really well. It's got a good, nice mix of equities and fixed income. And it really has done well. And they've got so many communities and pension systems contributing to Prim that they have an enormous amount of pooled assets that they can do better things with. Yep. I don't remember where Worcester County is on that. I don't know if Linda spoke of it. I don't know if they're in Prim or if they're trying to,
don't want to beat that one to death, but I was hoping that with new management there, it might actually improve our chances.
But yeah, put it this way, I don't think it can be worse. So, we'll start, eyeing that.
Very optimistic.
I've had some communities say, what do I got to do to get out? And I say, well, you got to go through the legislature if you want to create your own retirement system. Now you got to run it yourself. So, the headaches sometimes aren't worth it,
Yep.
but,
Okay,
I don't
thanks.
some
think we
have
wanna do
asked.
that.
Not a chance.
Okay, next slide. Just real quick on ARPA, you got about 2.6 million left at June 30 of 23 out of just over 3 that you were allocated. Just a reminder, you have to obligate that. I may not talk to you people again before 12/31/24. So you've got to obligate it, and obligate doesn't mean just to have the select board just approve it. It actually has to be committed, contractual, purchase order. It has to be really strongly committed by the end of this calendar year. Otherwise, there's going to be some clawbacks on that. So I just want to, I'm warning all my towns of that are going to be going through single audits. And then the fact that you commit it doesn't mean you have to spend it by the end of this year, but you have to spend it by 26. So if you have a project that's going to take a couple of years, commit to it, and then you spend it over the period of time that
And
they
then
allow.
Tony, your slide says 12,
21.
21, 26,
Yeah,
you mean
that's
12, 31.
That is a typo. I
Okay,
apologize.
thanks.
At least I haven't said Southbridge.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Not yet.
So next slide. Okay, a couple of things. These are informational items. We've talked about SAS 115. Network security, just stay on top of it. It's not going away. Stay vigilant. Do your phishing, email practices, which I'm sure are going on. See where the places are vulnerable. Just keep training your employees. You don't want to be a headline saying you got to pay ransomware. There was one community, I was shocked that they got hit because they had one of the best IT departments. They were doing everything and they still got hit. Shut the schools down for 3 days. It was just it was all over the news. It was crazy. So just make sure you're on top of network security. Fraud risk mitigation. Your financial team does a great job of controls, departmental receipts, but just stay on top of that. Fraud usually happens in very small amounts, in places you don't expect, and just keep on top of that with turnovers that are being done routinely and safeguarding of assets at your departments. Long-term obligations we beat to death tonight. And one thing I wanted to highlight here, investment income, nice job. The FOMC has been very aggressive raising rates, and the byproduct of that is a very, very robust investment income environment. And I beat the drum to death last year to my clients. If you got 10 million in cash, you can earn 5% on a T-bill. That's a $500,000. Don't ignore that. And I still got towns ignoring it. You guys did a nice job, I think, with the help of Bartholomew, in taking some of that general fund money that you do have a little excess in and investing it in longer term, not longer term, higher yielding vehicles. So nice job there. Continue to do that. I don't expect interest rates to really go down a lot in the next 12 months. They should start to hopefully go down a little bit, but not too much. Next. A couple of observations. We can talk about 3 that got resolved. Your assessors overlay balances. So last year I wrote this up because there was the assessors overlay looked so much higher than what you needed. What I came to find out after doing further investigation is that you always do something right after year end. You do a release of overlay, which normalizes it. So I would consider any concern that I had there resolved. Your ambulance receivables, you've gone through a process of looking at the aging, finding those that are not collectible, and you've written them off. So you've done a good job on your ambulance receivables. Your stagnant special revenue accounts, same thing. Kyle has gone through them, sat down with department heads. They've appreciated the fact that they had extra money they weren't aware of, spent that, made some transfers where you needed to repurpose some funds. So you've done a decent job on that. And then the one thing I had coming back to OPEB is the reason we're having this conference call here on May 7th and not in January or February when we normally have it is because the valuation was late. So I would like to see that done more timely. You do have a single audit deadline of March 31st, and you have an official disclosure deadline of March 26th. So there's two big deadlines in March. We should really try to hit those deadlines. It was kind of a little bit of a fire drill trying to get that done at the end of this year. So hopefully you can get the information you need to Linda probably by the fall, so that it's ready for our audit and not holding up the audit. Other than that, fantastic job by the financial team as usual. The town is well run. We don't find a lot of problems. It's a joy to come in and do this audit. And we do so much testing, especially with the single audit. Now you have to do just enhanced testing. So, you know, tiny little things here or there, you know, we talk about with Kyle or Brian, but there's really not much of that either. It's really run very well. So, a happy audit. And anything else? I think that's it. So any questions, concerns?
No questions for me. It's a positive report, and thank you very much.
But I would like you to
I
see the presentation you did for the hedgies as far as the pension obligation bonds at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So sometime when it's not as busy with budgets and everything else you have going on, and you've got a nice meeting where there's not much going on, we can do a presentation and have all kinds of questions and really get into it.
So just one question, Tony. So at this time next year, the town is considering a fairly big building project, right? Which is for replacement of a school, right? It would be a very, very big project, and the cost, it's in a there's a building committee ongoing. They haven't made a recommendation about specifically want to do yet. So I can't tell you what the number would be or what the state reimbursement would be, but in the somewhat near future, you know, we're looking at potentially adding a lot of borrowing for that project. So from what you see, do you think we're in a good, hard to say without knowing, of course, the right numbers, but do you think we're in a fairly solid position with our bond rating to entertain the possibility of, you know, additional debt to service the construction of the school?
Brian, who's your advisor? Is it Hilltop or Unibank?
Unibank.
Yeah, I would, so it depends if you're doing, you know, 80 million in 10 years. Yeah, that could be a problem. Because it's gonna put some stress on the town. Obviously it's a school building, so I assume it's gonna be stretched out over 20 years. So I don't think that's gonna hurt your debt ratio too much. I would just check with Unibank, see what they feel. I would not say let's not do the project if you need it done, but you guys are kind of borderline on this AAA because your reserves. I'd like to see those over 15%. Then you got a solid 1 there, and that helps if your debt score goes down a little bit. So if you can manage those reserves up a little bit, you know, that would help. I have not seen in the last 10 years a community that has a AAA get lowered to a AA. I have not seen it. So even though they've gone through debt. So my initial thoughts are that it won't happen. They won't lower your debt, but your reserves are a little lower than normal. Sometimes these other towns are usually that are AAAs are usually above that 15%. So that's
because our stabilization's only $600,000 because we intentionally have lowered that for a philosophical reason. So that's what's low compared to others.
Yes, no, it is. And these are the things that, if you did take on that debt, I don't foresee you losing the AAA. I mean, that the town has run really well, which is a big score. The economic score is not going to change. That debt score may change, but like I said, if you can go in and increase one of the other scores, like your reserve ratio, that would help immensely. So that might be something to think about as you're going through your forecast and your budget process. And some of the things I talked about earlier about maybe looking at where you can increase revenues and whatnot. I assume it's going to be debt excluded, right? The portion that's not.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
so that'll help. because it's not going to be a budget addition. You're gonna have taxes to support it. The other thing, and I don't know if you folks have thought about it, I was at a conference yesterday where they talked about the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not, but there are massive credits on these school buildings that you can recoup after the project is done if you're doing energy efficiency. So this was just passed by Biden in the last year. And a lot of towns are not aware of this. So I definitely would want your project managers, whoever's designing this, where you can use ground source heat pumps versus air source heat pumps. You know, if you use a certain combination of efficiency, green things in your buildings, which you usually would do anyway in a new building, there's a lot of money available to come back. Amherst is getting $7 million back on the building they just completed, big high school project.
We've got a whole subcommittee that is dedicated to that, and we will get more money from Massachusetts because of the same reason. So I think we've got that under control.
Excellent. I always want to mention it just in case, but you know, excellent. Good to know everyone's on the ball. So,
Okay.
so that's it. Anything else?
I think, any other
Comment?
questions from the board?
Can I make a quick comment?
Of course.
Just for the audience, I'm impressed. This is a clean audit. And audits are rarely this clean in my experience in the terms of finding things that the auditors say, gee, you guys didn't do a good job of that. So I think that real kudos to the finance team to keep on top of stuff like this. And hopefully we'll continue that going forward. But again, this is, I think, fairly unusual, at least in my experience with these kinds of things. And second, Tony, my annual question for you, is there anything else going on out there that other towns are actually doing that you haven't touched on that we ought to consider, given your breadth of knowledge around what's happening with the state?
Usually if things come up in conference calls and in meetings that I'm in, I'm usually, you know, reminding Carla and Brian when we're doing the audits. Right now, I don't think there is anything that, right now, I don't think there's really anything. I mean, you're aware that like mitigation funds, that new law that passed, that you can actually put those into special revenues now, like your cannabis and your, you know, I don't know, not that you have a large cannabis or any cannabis, but there's things like that are changing. And that you can put into special revenue funds instead of having to go through free cash and spending it that way. Your opioid settlements can now go into special revenue funds.
We did that one.
What was that?
We did that.
Yeah,
Not a big deal. So I assume if you find those things as you go along during the year, you will pick up the phone, let Brian or others know that.
Yeah, we do. And I do an annual thing down at over at Amherst for all the accountants. And I usually do like a bullet point. Here's what's going on in the state that I'm aware of. You know, and sometimes the towns are not aware of it. The DLS does a great job of putting out bulletins on the latest and greatest also. So
Good. Okay.
Yeah. So lots of good things. The other thing that's catching fire, okay, that will catch fire. City of Boston just did a big presentation yesterday. Is artificial intelligence and what you can do with that. And they're able to replace staff people by simply having someone that they can take this meeting that we're having right now and apply it to some software and it writes the minutes for you.
Right.
So
We've heard of that.
Yeah.
We've heard about that.
We've seen that.
yeah, so there's some really amazing things you can do that are going to start to really be a cost savings. I'm not saying right today, but as AI evolves in the government arena, and Boston is in front of this because they've got like 300 people just devoted to AI right now, and so I'm hoping they share what they find.
That makes me very nervous, actually.
Well, the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, and you can't put it back in.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can replace the
So there are
select
some pros and cons.
So
of
Tony,
that.
I appreciate your expertise. This has been great again, like it was last year. And I appreciate your appreciation of our finance team. We also feel the same way about them. 2.
Great.
Excellent. Well,
Alright.
you guys have a nice night and look forward to talking to you in the near future.
Okay, so that's a good segue to the next item on our agenda, and this is the last kind of financial subject like this, which is our third quarter financial update from our finance director, Brian Ballantyne, and our town accountant, Carla McAuliffe.
What a whirlwind, those two, huh?
They're good.
They're great.
That was very good.
Yeah, yeah, they're great.
We'll just get the presentation up and we'll roll right through it. There's pretty non-event
We'll be quick, we'll be
quarter. Flowers. Okay, I'll take the first page. So this is again, usually where we bring this up front, where we look at the revenues for the past quarter. Really pretty good total revenue. You know, is interesting. It's $37,000 difference from year to date from last year, which is basically based on the amounts we're talking about is a scratch, really. It's pretty much even. And that's great. Just 3 mentionables, the motor vehicle, building fees, water fees, all had a similar trend where we started out with some very large or fairly large deficits from year to year. From the earlier quarters, those have actually, the water revenue is interesting. It's almost halved. And actually the motor vehicle came down quite a bit too. So those gaps we saw at the beginning of the year that I think I mentioned months ago that we were hoping they'd trend in the right direction are now kind of trending. Some of it was timing differences, but some of it was just revenue that has, strengthened during the year. So that's great. I usually mention just some specific areas that are just a little unusual because they're a little higher, but the dump sticker revenue, I think, makes sense. Again, I think I mentioned that last quarter with the action the board took with rates and everything. And, the ZBA had some one-time type things that certainly boosted that a little more than usual. So that's my quick overview of that. I think we're gonna be good. You wanna take this one?
Yep.
I can do it.
Looking ahead to reserve fund transfers and any internal transfers. The select board, we may need an internal transfer due to the increased postage volume and costs. We kind of can't keep up with that once we set the budget. The post office keeps increasing postage, so we may have and need an internal transfer for the select board budget for that. ZBA, there was some additional hours due to the 40B projects, which makes sense. Fire, we knew early on in the year about the $30,000 matching provision for the scuba grant. The tower repair was estimated at 40 grand, and it looks like it's going to be reduced to about $8,400. They decided to not do some things for the tower, so that should help us with fire and their expenses. And the election and town clerk, they have additional election costs due to, the at-home voting and sending things back. So they did receive some funds from the state. It was about $1,500, and Jim did apply for another additional reimbursement of costs. He's not sure how much he's going to get or when it comes. If it does come beyond June 30th, it will go to free cash, but at least he's doing what he can to get those additional costs reimbursed by the state. And then we have just year-end transfer. We had some long-term debt payments. We budgeted them in short-term, so we're just going to have to switch that up at the end. But we don't anticipate a big turn back of the reserve fund. We had that big vote for the school, 87,970 for the mold. So it'll be look a little different on the turn back side than it was in 23, but nothing too crazy, nothing that we didn't expect.
So those, I just totaled up those numbers, it's a little under like 128,000 of the,
Including the mobile.
yeah. So that there's room.
Right, and some of them will be most likely between funds, bless you. Between departments
Sure.
versus reserve fund transfer. So as the year draws to a close, we'll take another look. We are looking close at police and fire. Their overtime costs are high just due to staffing challenges they're having now. They're filling a lot of shifts with overtime. So that's one thing we're really keeping our eye on and working with the departments. Discretionary spending, they're trying to keep that to a minimum because really their staffing costs are very high right now. IT, operations, DPW look really good. And actually for snow and ice, we only spent like 30% of the snow and ice budget this year. So Mother Nature was good to us that way. And so there will be a turn back there, so which will be good. And benefits, we're not anticipating a big turn back in our budget for benefits. It's kind of trending as we thought. This slide I did for Sam. Because it does deserve its own slide. Actually, so I've had an update since the slide was done last week. The final claim, which is our Category Z claim for FEMA, was filed last week, which is great. Once we get that process, this will formally close the grant program for FEMA. So right now, to date, since 2021, we've received $691,000 from FEMA. So I felt every dollar of that, so.
And I know you were worried at times that some of the claims might be rejected, but nothing was. Everything's been approved. So that's
Right.
great, Carla.
We had successfully, got over the hurdles and all that. There was some back and forth, but yeah, and if all of the Category Z claim is approved, it will actually be a little too good because we claimed some employee benefits as well, some indirect costs that we were able to do. So, there's some towns that have big deficits sitting on their books for CARES, FEMA, whatever. We will not be in that shape at all. And then if you add the CARES amount in there with the Category Z that we've had, that's a total of 959,000. So
Wow.
that's no great.
This is like a graduation for Carla because, when she came back to the town, it was during a very tumultuous time. CARES and FEMA, were raging, and she really didn't have much time to be a town accountant.
Well,
So
and
this
the-
was the focus.
And the landscape for that stuff was extraordinarily fluid.
Yeah,
Yes.
Regulations were changing and people weren't sure exactly how it was going to work. So
yeah,
Of
it was a
course.
lot.
kudos to you guys for keeping on top of that. That's a big number.
Yep.
Really,
Yep.
million.
So I
Well,
just-
plus ARPA's 3, so it's $4 million in total.
yeah,
Mm.
right.
Mm.
Yep. So, the next slide is ARPA.
Oh, sorry.
actually. So.
So you're under there, sorry.
That's all right, because that definitely deserves its own slide too. Basically, I know you guys are gonna do some voting tonight, which will change some of these buckets, but we actually have for other long-term considerations and allocated amounts about 150,000. So, and the projects voted are 2.9 million. So this again, we're trying to move people along. My message to everybody, boards, committees, departments is spend it, we're trying to get a real good number by 6:30. Might have a few little stragglers, maybe some money coming back, but I'm harping on it.
I know you are.
And people are being responsive. So that's great.
So I got a couple quick questions about budget. What made me think about this is we were looking, we're going to talk about possibly funding some sidewalk project design and may use some of Chapter 90 money to do it, to get it all done. And we got $225,000 from what I call the millionaire's tax fair share amendment. Have we not gotten a penny from the state for schools? I mean, I don't think so, right? So what are they doing? I mean, that's what the whole bill was for, is for schools and for transportation. So I don't understand what's going on there. And then, am I correct in that the Senate and House have proposed a local aid number less than what the governor did? Slightly less? Like 1%?
Slightly less.
Yeah.
I know it's close. Yeah.
I don't get that either.
Because
Inflation's
revenue projections have declined.
Oh, they have because of this. So many people have left the state, so they're taking less money, but still, inflation's 3 or 4% and they think, that 1% is the right. I just don't get the thinking about that. You know, because then you gotta find other money to make up for where they don't give you enough. All right, that's it for me.
So I mean, this, obviously, this final slide is just a quick overview, like we said, we do every quarter, but some things, the budget's passed, the DOR, actually, the DOR you should be hearing about soon as an update. I know they've been a little distracted with, I think they're doing some, other towns rolling along with them too. And, they do some work, with the associations. I know they've been busy with that. So I think they may have gotten a little distracted, but they should be, they have all our material, they've had it. So I believe it's probably getting close.
And they want to deliver both together. They'll deliver it in a one-shot deal, so.
So obviously, the board's probably very well aware that the library, Neary, and the community center are all kind of ongoing issues that we're moving along. I think Neary, and again, probably some of you are very familiar with that, is gonna start rolling pretty faster on the next month or two. So we'll be watching that. I think we're getting close at least to a spot, probably in the next month or two, where we can do some models of what it might cost the town. I think we're right on the edge there. So that'll be coming. And then the short-term notes, just so the board knows, you'll be seeing the usual paperwork on this stuff. We're doing short-term notes for some of the ongoing projects like the town hall that we're out of money. The Neary study that we're gonna be spending a lot of money soon. And so we're gonna be doing that before June 30th. So you'll see that in the next month.
Well, I thought for the town hall renovation, this is all ARPA, at least the exterior. No, CPA.
It's CPA.
Yeah.
So it's CPA debt.
We
All right.
spent
Okay,
the
CPA debt.
money, now we're into the bond money.
Okay,
We didn't
thank you.
bond the full amount,
Yeah.
so we're just taking an additional,
it.
what we need. Yeah,
I just got nervous when you said out of money.
yeah.
So you'll see all that stuff. Yeah,
Not really out of money.
you'll have the signature party at some
Cash
point.
flow, yeah.
So you're thinking rates are going to go down, so you're going to do short term for a while, or?
Yeah, exactly. The short-term rates were pretty low, actually, and they typically are much lower than the regular. permanent rates,
The
so,
curve is still inverted slightly.
Yeah,
So Brian, where did Tony get his $6 million reserve number? So you got 2 with free cash, you got 600 with stabilization, so call it 3. Where's the other 3? CPA funds invested, the trust funds, where's the other 3 he's calling reserve? I hope he's right, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
I don't know if he's doing what we sometimes do is consider, it's not formal, but we consider the levy capacity reserve.
I thought that too, but I don't think that's what he was doing. So
Definitely not 6.
can you find out and just,
Was, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can follow up with him. Maybe it was just yeah, I can.
Well,
follow
it's pretty important. so-
it was very important because we do need to watch that bond rating.
Yeah.
Because, this debt is going to be big. So we really do need to make sure we get those ones. So we
I
keep
know we're
the,
very nervous about it with the public safety building now. It's like,
oh,
now
this
this
is
is much.
Well,
really, this
Right.
is a
Dwarfing that.
exponentially bigger.
Right.
It's just a crazy time. Construction costs are so high.
Yeah, $1,000 a square foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other further questions?
Just again, kudos for the hard work on not only this thing, but the audit and the OPEB stuff. I know that's a huge amount of detail work getting that data. So thanks to you guys.
Thank
for-
you. You can see one consent agenda item that's about the debt. It's for the new projects, actually, which we won't be entertaining until the fall. There is a little scriveners that were in it. Kathy's aware of it. That needs to be voted as a 24 instead of a 23. It's a standard vote though, so I think,
You're going to fix it.
Yeah.
It was reversed. The numbers got reversed.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so I'd like to do some reordering of the agenda here because I know our DPW superintendent, Bill Cundiff, is in the online audience and he can speak to a couple items that we've got under other matters. A little bit on C, but also E, this ARPA funding for the sidewalk improvements. And also the Atwood Road lead testing and next steps. Are most people here who are present in the audience here for the sidewalks item?
Kevin and Grant are here for the rail replacement.
Okay, all right. So just to, we can take care of the kind of the largest number of people
Yeah.
first.
Yep.
I was thinking the best way to order this, Kathy, if I turn it over to you to provide kind of the background of what's the balance that we've got in, ARPA set aside for sidewalks, what we committed so far, and then maybe we could turn it over to Bill to just give a quick, background on the quotes that you got from VHP and the way that you ranked the different proposals in the memo that you sent to the capital committee on February 9th. Does that sound good? All right, Kathy?
Okay, so we are proposing to basically spend tonight the rest of the amount that was put into the bucket for sidewalks from the ARPA committee. We started off with $704,000. We appropriated $50,000 for the actual beta work for the sidewalks. And then we took about 140 out in February to try to help balance the budget for fiscal year 25. So right now, and Carla, check my number, I don't have my glasses. I've got 509,453. You agree? So that's what's in the sidewalk
What's the
bucket,
number you said again?
509,453. So that's what we're trying to consider allocating completely to 3 or 4 sidewalk projects tonight. And when I say allocate, today we're talking about the design, which we believe will easily fall within our time requirements, that the actual contracts are signed before 12/31/24, and we've got the contracts tonight to consider. And then the actual work gets paid for by 26, which should be no problem according to Bill. This should be done pretty fast.
Okay, so Bill, do you want to give the quick overview of the, the rankings that you had in your memo, and the numbers that the proposals that we've got from VHP? Can't hear you. Can we? No, sorry, can't hear you.
No, show is muted, but no sound.
Reboot.
Still can't hear you.
Still no sound.
You should reboot.
Yeah, maybe if you just leave and then come back, and then maybe that might work. Okay.
No.
No, it's not working.
Still no sound.
Yeah. What if you just did it without the headphones?
No sound.
All right.
Maybe try
Okay,
without the
yeah, you can
headphones.
just-
Use your phone.
Okay.
Yeah, he's going to.
All right. Oh, you probably?
No, I think.
All right. Well, he dropped. Yeah, he can hear us. You want to just try calling us and we'll just put you on the phone and. Okay. All right,
Semi-4?
okay. All right, we'll just put them up here? Okay. All right. Okay, so Bill, we get you on Vanessa's cell phone, we get you on speakerphone here? Okay. Okay, so can everyone hear him? Okay. All right, so Bill, I think where we left off is, could you just provide an overview of, the memo that you did to the capital committee about, the rankings that you had, and then the quotes from VHB for the engineering services?
Sure thing. Is it possible to get the screen share so that I can show a map? Beautiful. Okay, so this map represents the a report that was done in 2015 ranking different streets within the town. They're ordered numerically in terms of what the committee ranked as priority. So number one, as you can see, Route 85 was listed as number one. Number two was Newton Street. Number three, Corderville Road, so on and so forth. I took this recommendation as my starting point, but I also then looked at a number of other factors that might make the project go a little more smoothly. Those factors included lack of street trees, stone walls, tried to find areas that were on the list that had little obstructions and potentially few land takings. So after I did all of that, I basically came up with a list of streets, short list. What is shown as number 11 on the map is my first recommendation. It's Parkerville Road, starting at Richards Road and going to Middle Road. That has Finn School at the south end. My second recommendation is Richards Road, coming off of Corderville Road and going to Woodland Road. That's my second recommendation. Third recommendation is Woodland Road, going from Richards Road to Oregon Road. So those two are numbers 5 and 13 on the map. And then lastly, shown as number 4 on the map, well, a portion of 4, not the whole number 4, is on Oak Hill Way, going from the end of the existing sidewalk to Walnut Street. So taking those into account, hold on a second. We requested VHB to give us a price proposal. So we're just looking at the info. I'm still on this map. How is that? Oh, are we screen sharing here? Or is that? your
Yep,
map?
that's up on the big screen here in the hearing room.
Yeah, I think that's Vanessa has that perhaps. So I'm looking at my spreadsheet. Basically, VHB gave us a price of anywhere from $80 a linear foot to $95 a linear foot for design services. So the fees for each of those projects range between $108,000 and $168,000. The four total about $564,000. That's just the engineering. I want to emphasize that. And as part of this, this does not include any kind of easement takings or acquisitions that we might need to get. It doesn't include plans associated with those takings. So there are some other factors that are not included in those prices. Certainly we can work with Chapter 90 and reserve some of those funds for that. And there's some other funding sources for the construction that we might be able to use, such as Safe Routes to School. I don't know that we've taken advantage of those funds yet to date.
And then because Richards Road is one where there is a school on Richards Road. That's something that might be able to, yep, and Parkerville Road. Where for some of the actual construction money you might be, you get the, what was the term you used? Roads to schools or walk to school? Yeah.
Safe Routes to School.
Safe Routes to School. Yeah, okay.
Mass Highway program where they fund, road construction or sidewalks are great. They love sidewalks. So all of those, with the exception of Oak Hill, have that connectivity to a school. So I think they would all qualify as a candidate.
Okay. And so the engineering plans, these are the plans that would get a bid package so that you could put it out to bid, and then you'd have a price for the actual construction. But I know that you're saying that the engineer work might reveal a bunch of other things which are relevant to that, but is that basically fair?
That's a fair representation. I do want to talk to VHB. We've kind of hopscotched on vacation. So when he prepared the proposal and when I was out, he was out. I really haven't had a chance to refine the proposal. There's a few comments I have on it. Nonetheless, these numbers are, I'm convinced, very conservative. If anything, I would expect their design fee to go down that's associated with this. I think they were very conservative in their approach on that number.
Okay, so do you think like these proposals are the final proposal in terms of dollar amount, or?
Well, like you say, there may be peripheral
Yep.
activity, like if they need to prepare a taking plan, or, if there's a drainage issue, a conflict with a drainage pipe. It does include permitting for scenic roads. And it includes development of preliminary and final design drawings. So, I'm confident these numbers are very good, but they can't anticipate, problems that they haven't demonstrated yet.
Okay. So before we open it up to comments from the public, are there any comments from the board about the proposals? Or?
Can we just clarify? So Bill, on the three VHBs that are in front of us, everything but Oak Hill, in the paragraph, which is page 8 of 9, they say lump sum fee basis. So I thought this was a fixed fee. It's not?
I did too.
It is presented as a lump sum fee, but because I feel it's a very conservative number, I'm going to request that they change that to not to exceed. That's one of the changes I want them to make. And on my preliminary report that I gave to Capital, if you take a look at the engineering design fee, which is in the second paragraph, they gave me a range of $45 a linear foot and $75 a linear foot. They gave me that number. Now they're up between $80 and $95 a linear foot, which is significant. I wanted to talk to Greg about that.
And another thing I saw just in the draft contracts is it calls for, there's an abutter meeting as part of that the engineers would have at a meeting with the butters, which I think is good. And then also, there would be a meeting with the Public Works Planning Board as the reviewing entity, but the Public Works Planning Board is no longer, it wouldn't really be the correct entity to be the reviewing entity. Do you think it should be like the Capital Planning Committee or?
Well, I think,
Or just do we-
certainly we could have a working committee.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be determined, and Greg, I'm sure, wasn't aware that that happened at town meeting.
Okay, so that's something you would work with them on that.
Yes.
All right. Okay, and the total of the three that, for which, you know, the quotes we had in, you know, in writing in the packet are the Richard,
456.
the Richards Road, Parkerville Road and Woodland Road is 456 of the 509, 453 balance in ARPA, right? So then
Correct.
you sign these contracts and then that is enough to satisfy the requirement that you contractually commit to the money by
That's-
December 31st, 2024?
She's nodding
That is
yes.
correct.
Okay,
Yep. That's cool.
all right.
Uh,
Okay, so, we open up to comments. Anyone offer from the public wanting to comment? Bill?
I'm Bill Harrington, 4 Richards Road. Been at 4 Richards Road for 60 years. When I moved in, it was a little country road, and now it's a high-speed connector road. And the pedestrians that take that road are taking their life in their hands every day. Given the apparent renewed interest in upgrading the town sidewalks, I would like to give you a bit of history and call to your attention the fact that over 5 years ago, a petition was signed by 50 local residents requesting a sidewalk be constructed in the area of Richards Road East and the section of Woodland Road. These streets are considered connector roads, which experience considerable auto and truck traffic. Back in 2015, a sidewalk committee was established, and I'm just reading this, and we already heard that they ranked these streets pretty highly. In 2018, the residents of the area of Richards Road East and small section Woodland Road, realizing how dangerous to pedestrians these roads had become, submitted a petition to the DPW supervisor requesting a sidewalk. Residents pointed out at that time, given the high level of pedestrian traffic and interest and the streets being relatively narrow, sidewalks on these streets are needed to be given as a high priority. As funding becomes available, looks like we may have that. Subsequently, we also called this attention to the select board. 50+ residents signed, many of them who are frequent pedestrians users living on Richards Road East, Watkins Lane, Woodland Road, Ted Lane, and Caroline Terrace signed the petition. This section of sidewalks would add to the network of sidewalks which were constructed when the town train station was upgraded in 2002 and is the missing link in a network of sidewalks utilized by pedestrians from a large section of the southern side of town. We hope that the ARPA funds will be made available to fund the engineering design study. Looks like maybe that's true. And that once the study has been completed, that the funds would then become available in short order to complete the long-awaited and sorely needed sidewalks. As they say, things come to those who wait, and we, the petitioners in this room, certainly have completed the waiting portion of this project. Incidentally, this morning on the news, there was an article about Governor Healy has signed a transportation infrastructure bonding bill, and the town will receive $430,000 from this fund. And it mentioned several different programs that were available, and one of the programs was the Complete Street Program, which was strictly designed to give pedestrians more safety as they proceeded down the streets. So we're optimistic at this point that something might really happen, and hopefully we get not only an engineering drawing, but we get a sidewalk.
So I agree with a lot of what Bill said, but I live kind of in the same area, but not for that length of time. But, one important consideration is this is a route where people walk to the train for commuting. And, you look at today, it's very early in the morning. You can walk down to the train to catch in the morning. It's light, and you come back, it's light, but that's 4 months of the year, right? And it's dark. And once you add snow, it becomes dangerous. You're walking in the street, in the dark to and from the train. There's many people that do that, and there's a lot of safety issues with that. Grant?
Hi, Grant Farrington, 58 Flag Road. Sorry, I have a cold. I just have a question about the original map that's shown on the screen. I kind of missed the first part that Mr. Cundiff said, but when was that map created?
2015. There was
Okay.
a sidewalk, there was a committee formed that ranked
Right, there are
where sidewalks would go.
about 50 possibilities on that.
Yep.
And that was actually reviewed with the Public Works Planning Board. It was reviewed again in 2019, I think it was, by an engineering firm, and changed the rankings a little bit. But there's been a lot of study on this process historically.
But I think for some of these, there already have been engineering plans prepared for these sidewalks. And for some of them, I think they've, like number 3, I think is now Porterville Road. It doesn't go all the way the length of where it's number 3, but I think that's completed.
At least part of the engineering
Yep.
work there. Yeah, they're trying to get that on the tip list.
Yeah,
And Bill is still working on that, I think,
Yeah.
on the tip list.
all right.
Thanks, that's helpful. And then my other part of that question is, oftentimes when you're making sidewalk improvements, obviously it sounds like the people in Richards support it, but what are your plans for community engagement process so that you talk to the people on, on the roads that you're proposing these on, kind of get community feedback to see that that's the will of the people. I live on Flag Road, and I noticed it's on that list, and I know that a lot of people in my neighborhood might not want to see sidewalks, as it would involve, cutting down scenic trees, perhaps stone wall removals. I know there's been opposition to that in the past, so not for the 4th tonight, but for other ones on this list moving forward, what is the select board or other boards or committees plans to, kind of have an outreach process?
Well, I
and
can just
approach
say for the Woodland and Richards, I know a lot of the people who live there, and just reached out myself to people, let them know about the meeting. And then I don't know as many people that live in the part of Richards where they're looking to do the sidewalk improvement. But I did, when I ran into Bonnie Faniff this weekend, I mentioned to her this and asked her to just spread the word. But another thing that's part of the contract is that there would be notification to everyone along the sidewalk road for in a butter meeting. So I think that's part of the plan for the community engagement as part of this process.
Right, it's written into the draft of the contract.
Bill?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the contract that's before us has 2 steps in the design phase. The first step is a preliminary plan. After that preliminary plan is prepared, that's at the point we would meet with the residents and then take their input, and then we would move forward toward a final design plan. So that would be a 2-step process. So we do have to do the initial data gathering, the surveying, identify trees, stone walls, drainage issues, any potential land takings, so that we could have a very thorough conversation at that preliminary stage, take the input, and then finalize that for the final design.
If a neighborhood wants to organize to not have sidewalks, they're more than welcome to do it. And I know a dozen neighborhoods that will gladly take that money and use it, including my own, which is not on the list.
We're number 27 on the beta list.
We're going to have a
I
conversation
know,
about
I
that.
don't know how, but I think we may have missed Grant's point. I don't think he's necessarily has an issue with what we're doing tonight. We've got to spend this money quickly.
Yeah, I just want to
And
clarify.
believe me, we know this is just a small step, but it is a step. You know, we're all very excited about trying to truly get some projects done. We know what we think the total cost is, and I think we've got ways to do that too. So, where's Bill? So Bill, you waited for the room in the senior center and now you're going to get sidewalks. You must just feel great, right? So Flag, Flag would be, yeah, of course we need sidewalks there, but look how hard that road's going to be with all the trees and all the winding stuff. So yeah, so we're not going to give up. This is a start. We're talking about maybe floating a big bond at some point to be able to do a lot, but that's not what we're doing tonight. Tonight, we're just trying to get the ARPA money on its way to being spent so we can do what the ARPA committee asked us to do, which is spend this money on new sidewalks.
No, I appreciate
Mhm.
that. I
So-
guess I'll just advocate for, as you move forward with,
Yeah.
again, not tonight, but for future sidewalk projects that you engage the community to.
Yeah,
see if,
that's a
what
really
they
good
want.
point, Grant. And if you look in the packet, the VHB draft has it all laid out. I think this is on page 5 out of 10. So you'll see it's been written into the.
So just one, caveat, Kathy, to what you're saying. This is just the engineering money
Yeah.
to prepare the plans that go out to bid, and then to really bring this to to a conclusion, after the bid comes back and, you'd have some more information about different funding sources. Chapter 90 is, from the state. Bill mentioned some grant programs, Safe Routes to School, if I said that correctly. But if there's town money appropriated from town meeting where you also need that to fund the project, then you'd also probably need to come to town meeting and let people know you do support this.
Mhm.
And ask town meeting, not just the select board, to appropriate the money to get it done.
So Grant, I'm not sure if you saw the packet, but in the packet, I think this is there, you're going to see the results of the work that this group called Beta did recently. So all the roads are now ranked again. And of course, Alan are sitting here very disappointed that our road is 27. But anyway, so we'll get to it. But we just want to get this started tonight. That's our goal.
But Flag Road will be easy because Grant has influence with the planning board to assist with trees and stone wall permits. So
Andrew, I'd be interested to hear if there are any other residents who'd like to speak.
Andrew
Yeah.
Pfaff is actually his hand up in the audience.
Yep. Andrew? Andrew Pfaff? You had your hand up?
Andrew
Okay.
Pfaff, Oak Hill. I want to say I think this is a great head start in terms of the sidewalks that the community's been looking for. I know the Oak Hill residents have been looking for something for a long time. And I think this is a great start. I kind of agree with Bill that originally as you see here, it was all the way to the town line, but once you get past Woodland, you get into a lot of stone walls and people's front yards where they have big trees and things like that. So I think this is a start to get us down there. And I'm really pleased for it. I do think, Bill, that the distance I think that VHB had, I think was like 1,200 feet, but I think it's probably more like 900. And then on the Parkerville one, I think they have it going all the way to the Mass Pike overpass, but I think there is a sidewalk currently up to Hubley. So I don't know if there's any break in the pricing for an existing sidewalk that just needs to be redone versus a whole net new sidewalk, but I would push back on those two pieces. I think that's about 700-800 total linear feet, which will help us with our budget, but I would push back on those two pieces, but I think this is great. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
So Bill, is he right about, because I thought it was 900 for Oak Hill, and I didn't pay attention to, we ended up with 1,200. He thinks it's 900 down to Woodland.
Right. So
And you want to go to Walnut?
as I mentioned, Greg and I had worked on a list. We were really focused on the first 3 roads, Parkerville, Richards, and Woodland.
Yep.
Oak Hill was a late add after I had discussions regarding the availability of the ARPA funds. So we tried to kind of come up with a filler, and that was late in the game. So my initial estimate was based on Google Earth for distance. I did drive the site today and basically wanted to make sure I was conservative with the number, which is how I got to the 1,200.
Okay, but since you're gonna change this to not to exceed, this is all gonna get worked out in the end. We're not gonna pay, okay.
That's where I'm headed.
Good. Any other public comment?
Everybody here for the same area?
I want to point out that it's a rare meeting where an audience shows up and they seem to be happy.
Except Al, I'll point out,
Really?
I used to work with a guy who was a great salesperson. And he beat on me many times. He said, Sam, when you've got the sales, stop talking, stop selling. So I think what we're doing is proposing something that most of the folks in the room are
All right.
interested in supporting. So
Okay, so then, our time to make a motion. All right, so I move that we set aside from the 500,900,
509, 453.
yeah, from the 509,453 balance of the ARPA set aside for sidewalks, that we allocate $458,000 of that for the engineering studies for the proposed sidewalks on Parkerville Road, Richards Road, and Woodland Road.
And then what are you gonna do about Oak Hill?
Well, there, Kathy, I'm looking at what the
450.
the number you had is 108,000?
That's his new, that's what, so today we thought it was 900 first. Bill's driven it. He says it's 1,200 by what he drove. Google Maps said 900. He says it's 1,200.
Okay, because where I was getting at is if it's the 108, then it's, the total is above the.
we don't have enough, yeah.
Yeah,
There's not enough.
but he's gonna use, he can use, so we got two choices here. To do the whole thing, the 564, we can make up the excess by taking money from, National Grid, as far as ARPA money goes, or, he's got the bonus that the state gave us for chapter 90. Bill said he's happy to use chapter 90. So we've got two ways to fund that excess.
So the motion would be
Okay.
to allocate the 509.
Well, what, we can just do it in parts there.
Yes.
All right, so with the motion that I made, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. All right, so we've set aside that money.
Yep.
And then Kathy, could you speak to further the Oak Hill, to just review those numbers again, so it's not 108,000, it's,
Well, we're going to do 108 tonight because that's what he's got on here. He's going to revise this. So if 1,200 is wrong, it will come down, but we'll at least have it funded if we need the full 1,200 linear feet.
okay, so this is for engineering plans for there already is a sidewalk on Oak Hill Road. This is just an extension of it.
Yeah, so it picks up where it stops now, which is going up the hill, and then takes it all the way down to Walnut Street.
Okay,
so we need $55,000.
Well, we've got to do this exactly, so you've messed my math up here. Okay, so, all right, so we did 456. Well, we did 456, so now we've got,
So we had 509.
okay, well, we've just done 456, that's what we use. So we've got 44,000 left plus 9,433. 453?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 5.
so
Okay, so that's 53. Okay, so the motion should be to fund 53,453 out of ARPA for Oak Hill.
okay, and just before we vote on that, I want to acknowledge, we had a resident that wrote to us earlier today and here at a prior meeting, who lives on Main Street, suggested that from monies that isn't spent from the ARPA sidewalk funds, that instead be used for installing trash cans in Main Street where there's not places for pedestrians to throw away trash. I mean, I think that the ARPA committee, the original idea of the set aside for the sidewalks was for the construction of sidewalks. So if for whatever reason, the money that was intended for sidewalks isn't used for sidewalks, you're not able to, then we could consider that. But so that's why I don't think that makes sense. I think it makes sense to use.
Stick with it. The committee said do it. We know we've wanted it. You've been as passionate about this as anyone. And it's not enough anyway. So I think we should use every penny of the sidewalk for sidewalks.
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
The only thing that I could see as a potential issue is if we do come under budget on the first 3 sidewalks, we would have a residual balance. Oh,
Okay,
So we go to another one.
all right.
what happened?
I'm sorry. I just, I pressed the FaceTime and now it just. Sorry. We can still hear you. That's all that
you.
matters is hearing you, but I'm very nervous about pressing the wrong button because we're losing you.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, the way the motions have occurred, the first 3 projects, should they come under, would leave a balance in that sidewalk, in that ARPA funding account. So what I would suggest is that there be a subsequent motion that if there is a residual balance from that first motion, it could be applied towards Oak Hill as may be needed.
Okay, so how about this for motion? To fund Oak Hill, we will use ARPA to the extent there's ARPA, including any residual from the first 3. And to the extent there's not ARPA, we will use Chapter 90 money.
Second.
That's fine.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you.
Grant,
All
have
right,
a comment?
so I think does that take care of our ARPA sidewalk discussion for tonight?
Does Grant have a comment?
Yes.
Sorry, just a quick thing. Again, not opposed, but I did notice that on the agenda, the Oak Hill was not listed as one of the 3, in terms of potential sidewalks, it was only Richards, sorry, whatever the other 2 were, but Oak Hill wasn't listed. So are you allowed to vote on Oak Hill tonight?
We think so because the agenda talked about using ARPA monies for sidewalks. And when we realized we had not used it all, we added the next one on Bill's list.
It's in the packet.
Thank you.
All right.
You want to do that one?
Yeah. So for everyone who's here for the ARPA sidewalks, I think that takes care of our discussion on that item.
And I think we should clap.
Okay, all right.
I think we should clap really.
Um,
Finally. Thank you, Bill.
yes, and so things where we could get your assistance are first, this one should be pretty short. The quotes that you got for the town common rail replacement. I'm gonna actually just, if you can hold for just 1 minute, we'll let people leave.
There's a happy neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that Pine Hill's still just a road.
Well, it isn't over.
Okay, so I know we got 2 members of the historical
Yeah.
commission here. I think you're here to because you're interested in the rail replacement. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so one of our goals for the year was to make progress on some kind of cleaning up some improvements in the town common area. And one thing that everyone seems to agree on is that broken railing right in front of the town common. It's ugly and not safe. So Bill got some quotes, and I apologize, I don't think that these made its way into the packet, but these are just kind of, ballpark quotes on replacing the rail in that area. So there's one which is I would say a fancier way of doing it. You could have a kind of a chain link fence that looks nice for the ballpark quote was like $33,000. And then another way of just replacing what's there. The number was $3,800. So just as an update, and I originally intended this just a members report, but then I figured move it under other matters in case we talked about it further, I reached out to Ben Smith of CPC, say, hey, sounds like this is something which is, CPA eligible. He thought that made sense, but needed to think about it a little bit more. So I followed up with him, and I guess the CPC talked about it. And I first asked, is this something that we could put on a fall town meeting, right? We could apply now and see if town meeting could vote in the fall. And he said they discussed it, and they don't want to do that because they feel it could set some precedent for, similar things that are kind of a little bit off cycle, but that's a little bit, of an update there on the timing, but what I was thinking of is if we wanted to ask for CPA funds, we would just have to fill out an application. I guess working with Bill and the select board, maybe with the historical commission, to ask CPC to recommend this appropriation. And whether that's something that we want to do.
There's quite a difference in price between.
Right, so
the
why don't we
two.
Yeah.
decide which one we want to do first? Because the 3,000 would be kind of easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Something quick. If I had to say that wouldn't keep us up all night, pushing for an espresso break for
Oh, yeah.
select board meetings that last longer than 2 hours. Wow, you guys, real troopers.
We
Um,
get
just-
paid by the hour, so it's, we
I
want
hope
to
so.
keep going. So
Just some quick perspective that might help. You know, apparently, an area of the common was first fenced after the installation of the soldiers monument. That's the Civil War obelisk that's right in the center, in 1867. And it was a wooden fence of a fairly small proportion. And it apparently engendered a bit of a kerfuffle with the Pilgrim Church people because they thought it was, they were contesting the ownership of the land. And eventually that fence was removed. And by the way, in that 1867 date is very interesting because that's when the retaining wall at the south end, right next to Main Street, was installed with the granite steps coming up. So it just gives you some perspective. Then in the mid-1880s, the wood fence was removed and the granite post that we have out there and the iron rails, that's what it is, the top with the sort of little loops that secure the iron rails. So there may have been replacement to that, but that the first sort of installation of that granite post and iron rail fencing goes back to the mid-1880s. So for instance, the choice, you know, Bill came up with these two good choices of, you know, what about mid-30s for a new system that would be, I believe, an iron post with a chain, you know, between each section.
Iron or the granite?
Right, well, what's there now are granite with the iron rails. And then, of course, it was much cheaper, only about $4,000 to restore the granite posts, because some of them are split, and I believe there were two that need to be replaced in the judgment of the fencing company. And then to restore the iron rails is only about $4,000. That would bring us back to what it was looking in the 1880s. And so personally, both for historical accuracy and I think it would be quite beautiful. And also because I'm a born tightwad, I'm in favor of the lower cost, restore the granite. If there's a couple posts that need to be replaced, replace them. I would push hard for the original. I believe they're 9x9 dimensionally. And because we have other things, you know, Andrew, you and I walked the OBG, right? And there's a couple of those family plots that have the same system, the granite post and the iron rails, and the rails have been lost to time. So I think we could actually fold this in for very short money, deal with the granite post repair, the iron sort of loops that hold the iron rails in place, restore and replace the rails, and then do it over there as well on the same bid packet, and come in at a really reasonable cost. Because we've got other concerns, you know, out there. The howitzer needs some attention. I think there's some bench work. You could think about the plantings. You know, there's a feeling that the state historical people believe that the entire common was at one time ringed with trees, and that there was an alley that ran on that walkway that leads to the obelisk to Main Street, trees on both sides, oaks, maples, and beeches. And so you could also put some money toward a kind of long-term, in conjunction with the tricentennial, to think about the next 100 years of what the common is going to look like. But because there are, and there's some minor costs, getting back the James W. Burke sign that needs to be restored and replaced, restoring and replacing the cast iron Common Street signs at either end, which I think would be really elegant and quite beautiful. That's all low cost stuff. But you know, and I don't want to tell CPC how to operate, but I would be in favor of a fall review of this if we could convince our friends over there to take it up. I know Grant supports it as historical's representative on that committee. But again, I'm in favor of actually the lower, very low cost restoration of the granite posts and the iron rail. I think it would look like it did in 1880.
Yeah.
And be cheap.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Bill Cundiff, I just wanted to point out that, I don't want to set our expectations artificially high on the lower quote. Clearly at upwards of $3,000, you're not going to get a lot of restoration for that money. Really, we're looking at a paint job and straightening out the rail, connecting the ends, very minor work.
I see. This is restoring what they're not replacing
Correct.
with something that
So-
looks the same. Okay.
So I'm certainly happy I have 3 firms, names, and contact information. If we want a full restoration of what's out there, I certainly can seek that price also.
Let's do that.
And yeah, and I mean, even more expensive. That's just what I favor from a sort of historical accuracy perspective. And I do remember, Bill, I had a conversation with Chris Leroy at one point about this, and you know, he reminded me that they need access to that space for heavy equipment on occasion. And so I believe one of the posts that he wanted to make sure that one of those rails would be removable at any point. So to have access, let's say with a cherry picker or some kind of equipment he might need. And I said, that sounds great to me. And I'm sure that can be done as part of any iron work that would be necessary to make sure that DPW can always have the access they need. So I'd support whatever needed to be done in that regard.
Okay, so we'll get another quote on like a full restoration as opposed to just,
Nothing.
okay, yeah.
You know, this is one of those cases where the perfect is the enemy of the good.
I hear you.
And, you know, let's get this piece taken care of. And then if there's a bigger plan, which is going to take more work to put together, you know, but this is short money, you know, we could probably find it from some existing budget if we had to.
That's what I was also thinking that too.
Yeah.
But I do think it makes sense what Bill is suggesting to get some more quotes on, you know, if this $4,000 number is not really, you're not going to get that much restoration out of it for what you have in mind, Kevin, if Bill works on another quote, which might get you more what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not trying to get greedy either.
All right.
I'm trying to.
But I don't want to talk about this again. Why don't we ask Kevin to work with Bill and figure out what they think we should do? And this can be put through the DPW budget because of the lack of snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't object to a 2-step process where you do the relatively quick, relatively inexpensive upgrade to at least get it back to a more usable visual image
Yeah.
there. And then think about a subsequent restoration process as we go forward, maybe.
But isn't that what you're doing, Marguerite, as far as OBG working on? So Marguerite's already working on that piece of it. Maybe not outside the burial ground, but yeah, I agree that everything you said is certainly worth doing. But for now, let's just get this fixed,
Do the fence.
right?
Yep. Thank you, Kevin. That's really helpful information.
Okay, and Kristen Laval, you want to speak to this item?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, because CPC was suggested as a possible funding source if we went this fall. I am, sorry, this is Kristen Laval, Vice Chair of CPC. And we met last Thursday and had some discussions around not this specifically, but just more about the idea of taking fall town meeting applications. We didn't take a vote or anything. And of course, once the minutes come out, anything that's, you know, there and voted on overrides what I say. But generally, the sense I got was that not everybody was necessarily in favor because of the change to the guidelines. We already have issues getting applications in time, and then the review process, and then the going back and forth. And we're really trying to tighten that up. So then introducing yet another cycle into that when we are a volunteer committee, starts to sense that that could be overwhelming. The other concern voiced, and again, we took no votes on this, so I'm sure there'll be more discussions because there was some in favor. But the other consideration was if we start funding things in the fall and we don't know what's going to be applied for in the spring, then we may be giving away funds to projects that, are worthy of them in the spring. So it just gets a little bit more complicated from a procedural point of view. Again, we took no votes, more discussion to come, but I wanted to share that.
Thanks, Kristen. That's
thanks.
useful. Maybe, DP.
Well, I think
We're doing the cheaper alternative, so we don't need CP.
we might
CPA
not need
funds.
CPA funds for this.
But I strongly disagree with that statement. They lack projects. They don't have enough projects. And so here's a project, and I don't see why one project couldn't be considered for problem meeting, but it's a moot point now if we're going to do the smaller one.
Yep.
So Grant,
I'm struggling with the same idea that somehow,
really,
if we have a fall town meeting,
do them
this
as
is,
fast
this
as
is
you
a
can.
perfectly reasonable
Yeah.
thing to approve.
Of
I
course.
don't think we need to get into a whole,
Yeah.
side discussion about that at this point, though. Okay, but I think, so the consensus we have is Bill's gonna get some additional quotes on maybe that more match what, you're looking for, and feel free to talk to, Bill further about that. All right?
Is that true? I thought that you were okay with this as far as the less expensive alternative, as far as what was going to be done.
But I think what Bill's saying, he's warning us is that,
It's gonna cost more than 3,300 or.
yeah, is that this, I might have not said it as the way I wanted to. This is to restore what's there. It sounds like it's not even really replacing the current railing. Is that correct?
I think some of
Sounds
those,
It sounds like a little more work needs to be done to make sure that what that $3,800 quote really is. And if it's
Yes.
good, it's good, but
but I think
If I
some
may,
of,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
A lot of the issue with that rail is the way that the rail is connected to the post. Many of the granite posts are cracked and failing and no longer have a connection with the rail. So for $4,000, you're not gonna restore that. You might straighten it so it lines up and it looks like it's in line with it, but it's not going to restore it. So I don't want to falsely set expectations too high with that $4,000 number.
well, Bill, can I just jump in quickly? Some of those posts the granite is spalled because of the freezing. Is it possible to take them up and invert them and put the spalled part in the ground and use the part that's in the ground as the top and just cut a new hole in it?
If usually they put the bad end
Yeah,
of
part
the
in the
post
ground.
in the ground, so,
Yeah.
it's an unknown, if it works, then yes.
Okay, well,
But for
whatever.
$4,000, if we could get it looking reasonably like it was, without, very close inspection to it, sounds to me like that's progress.
Yeah, I would just say, Bill's dead right about the condition of the tops of a lot of those granite posts. And I was shocked at how low the bid was for the restoration. So he's absolutely right, I'm sure, to warn that it might be quite a bit more. But even if I guess what I would say to you is that even if it started to approach the 30-something thousand for a totally new thing with the iron stanchions and chains, I'm still in favor of trying to get it to look the way it did in 1885 with granite posts and iron rod, because that's historically accurate. And I think the money is still, in the grand scheme of things, low dollars. So I'll work with Bill and let's see what we get.
Okay,
Is that fair?
sounds good.
That's fair.
He's a good partner and we'll get it done.
Okay,
He is a good partner.
all right. So I think that takes care of this item.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just, while I'm sitting
Yeah.
here, 30 seconds? It's nice. It's something really nice. It's my
Okay.
birthday too, when I said it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. I played my trump card. It's
Okay.
true. It is my birthday. But so I just wanted to say, about 6 or 9 months ago, you guys made a decision about replacing streetlights. The
Yeah.
N-Star, the
Yes.
LEDs.
Yes.
I haven't heard a word about it. And I wanted to say, while I have the mic, they're fantastic.
Right.
I live on Lattisquama. You guys made the exact right choice. I remember it was low, medium, or high.
15 watt or 19 watt. Yeah,
Well,
we did the 19.
And I mean, I glazed off whatever you picked.
Yeah.
But they're fantastic.
All right.
It's not light pollution, but.
We really
when I
gotta-
walk the
we
dog
really
at
gotta-
night, It's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. I will note that this is two agenda items where people seem to be happy.
Okay.
Nothing wrong.
All right, so we're now at
Let's
the,
adjourn.
Yes, it was.
okay, next item is, okay, no, we're just gonna, to get through, Bill's been patiently waiting. Atwood Road lead testing, next step. So, Bill, I'll try to give this summary. Let me know if it's correct. You know, in the packet it's an updated proposal from Pear, right? Par. I always make that mistake. Par. For the quote on the, you know, the work to do some additional sampling, and then that gets you like a plume pattern, and that tells you where to remediate the lead. They did it based on the projected area where they believe, based on some photographs, the tank fell. There's a grid pattern, and then at the last meeting, we said, looks good. But how much extra would it cost if you did some additional sampling to the south on the Sturgeon's property? And it's a relatively modest increase in the cost. I had it cost $5,600 additional to do that. And to do that, they'd also need to have an access agreement with the abutter. Anything else that you think's relevant to that?
No, it looks good to me. I think it's a fair representation and a sound approach to quantify the issue. And then their proposal also makes an assumption that the soils will be removed from the site. If we want some other investigation, that would be on a subsequent agreement.
Okay, does this all make sense to everyone? Okay,
Are we including the 5,600 for the sturgeons?
yes, that's what I think makes sense. And Kathy, in our last ARPA vote, did we,
So this is where this one's got to
Yep.
come from. So we've got $75,000, excuse me, 75,616.29 of unallocated ARPA funds. So the first 75,616 can come out of that, right? So let's just say 75 for a moment. And then we'll need another 10,000 to come out of National Grid. So National Grid's got 75, so that will go down to 65.
okay, all right. So do we
And I
need to
look
take,
at Sam.
do we need to take any votes on this, or we already set aside what we need?
Yep. Sure.
Okay. All right. So is there any public comment about the lead testing issue?
For the sturgeons.
Okay, Kristen, you have a comment on that?
I have a follow-up comment to my earlier public comment. It's brief. It's just a request. Because both Ms. Cook and Mr. Hamilton responded to my comment, so I would just
Yep.
like the chance to make a
Well, I
suggested
really
alternative.
don't want to, I just want to keep moving.
I'm
where
just
it's
gonna
like
hang
ni-
on
it's
and do it
like
a public comment at the
9:20
end. So it's like
PM,
now
and we
or
could-
then.
Yeah.
I'm going to hang on to public comment and do it then. It's
Okay.
a brief comment. I think I have the right to
Well,
make it.
if you're going to say it under public comment, fine, but then I like to keep moving on the agenda, so.
Okay, see you
Go ahead.
then. Oh, yeah.
No,
just
I'm saying you want to
Okay.
speak to it now, that's
Well,
fine.
I was a little, quite frankly, as a volunteer, offended when I shared the thoughtful discussion that we had last Thursday about the topic of changing our guidelines that requires the volunteers to change their timelines. And Mr. Hamilton, Ms. Cook, you weren't in that conversation, but you dismissed us pretty quickly and said, that's silly. You don't understand it. If we're going to have this conversation, it should be done in a CPC meeting. It should be on the CPC agenda, and bring your grievances there, please, because you can't just expect them to show up here randomly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, so, Bill, I think we've covered all the agenda items that we had you here for.
Thank you.
Okay, and, all right, thank you for the technical difficulties there, but I think, thanks so much for your hard work to help us get through those 3 items, and I think we've actually accomplished,
We need to vote on that.
Yeah.
We gotta vote
oh,
on
sorry
both
about
of them.
that. Okay, so Bill, I guess that we're just gonna move to enter into this proposed contract. Is that what you want us to do?
And
Using ARPA funds?
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so I move that the board sign the letter agreement with PAR for the lead soil sampling program for the former Atwood tank parcel, that it also includes the additional scope for the abutting parcel, and that we use ARPA funds to do it.
second,
All those in favor? Okay,
Now we'll do a follow-up motion to make
okay,
sure-
so,
Carla's gotta know what to do here. So to be specific, we're gonna use all of the rest of the unencumbered, ARPA money, which is 75,616,29, and then the shortfall, which is $9,383.71 will come out of National Grid. Okay. Yeah.
okay, if there's second, okay, all those in favor? All those against? Okay, Bill, I now think that takes care of.
I appreciate it. Have a good
Okay,
night.
I really appreciate your patience and good work. Okay,
Thanks. Good night.
you want, should we take a 5-10 minute recess?
Do we just do the senior tax relief to close out the ARPA issue?
You want to do the senior tax relief to, was it $3,000 extra? Okay, do you want to make the motion?
So, we've been asked to give the senior, I think maybe tax relief committee an additional $2,000 to fund the $15,000 of relief that they are about to award. We did 12, so we do 3 more, so the 3 will have to also come out of the bid.
second.
All those in favor? Okay. Shall we take a 5-10 minute recess? Okay,
No pressure.
okay, so what's left? A quick chairs report. I think Mark mentioned this earlier, but Doug Peck has started up this new thing called Southborough Connects, a series of interviews. He just does half an hour interviews with someone that works for the town. It's on Southborough Access Media. So I did one this morning. It was just a Zoom interview. So it was very nice. And he's looking to just kind of let people know about that, have more people on. I guess so far he's had Mark, me, I think Kathy, maybe you're coming up soon, and then Pam from the senior center.
Yeah, I was on for the the electricity.
Okay.
Aggregator about a year or so ago and got good response from that. So great mechanism.
All right, that's my chair's report. And members report, Marguerite, I don't know if this is yours.
This will be very quick. This is having to do with the UMass Boston Gerontology Unit doing a town-wide assessment having to do with the senior population. But there's going to be a Zoom on Thursday, so I'm going to sort of withdraw this now from talking about it because we're not ready to talk about it.
Okay. Mark?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick items. We have a start date for our new fire chief. Chief Puntini will be, his first day is May 20. So we're excited. We were hoping to get him here before June, and we'll have him here for a couple of weeks in May. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with him over the past couple of weeks, and he's raring to go. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion.
Swearing in, have you guys set the date?
Swearing in, it looks like June 1st
Good.
is the date that, is going to work for the most people. And now I think that Ms. Hale will work with him to put together a program and figure out how he wants to structure this. It will be similar to what we did for Chief Newell. And so we'll work with him on that. The contract is newly signed as of today for the public safety staffing study. So reaching out to them, getting a kickoff meeting, making sure that they understand the points that the board had brought up, and we'll reinforce those again in terms of some of the positions that we've been taking a look at last year and also in the past couple of years. So I do want to point out that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Youth and Family Services has been pushing that. I am wearing one of the green is the color, and so the director had passed out for department heads and staff some of the green pins. We do have them downstairs at the treasure collector's office as well. Not the enamel, but for people who would like to wear them to support it. I know that we've been working, myself and Miss Hale, although in reverse order, Miss Hale and me, because she's been the lead on this, to put together some programming which does address mental health that we'll be having over the next couple of weeks. One of them is a program actually this week, tomorrow, for Habits to Thrive, exploring how to improve sleep, decrease stress, and feeling better. And then also we've got something on May 16th discussing emotional intelligence. And these are some of the things that employees in the surveys had asked for. And so we're working on those things.
May 14th?
And that was May 16th.
Yeah, May 14th is Carrie Stack.
Yes, and then well, I hadn't gotten there yet.
I'm sorry.
But
That you're skipping
I've
it.
got the papers in front of me. So on May 14th, again, Youth and Family Services has got a lot of programs and different things going on. They're looking at May 14th. They've got Laugh and Learn, the Power of the Positive. This is being held at St. Mark's Episcopal Church at 6:30 p.m. And Carrie Stack of the Say Yes Institute is coming to speak. A lot of good feedback and everything about the program. And they are being, Youth and Family Services being very generous in allowing employees to attend. I do plan on going over, and checking that out as well. So, the tickets are $20 per person. They can be purchased through Friends Southborough Youth Commission's Venmo account at Friends SYC. They also have a program on May 21st to question, persuade, refer how any person can prevent suicide. It's going to be on Zoom, and you can register for that online. And I believe that you can find that information at the Youth and Family Services page on the website. And on May 29th, they have a Celebrate Wellness event at the Community House from 6 to 8 p.m. There'll be live music, refreshments, and they will be celebrating this year's Laurie Sugarman Whittier Wellness Award winner, who is, it's not a surprise, right?
No.
Okay, Dr. Safdar Medina. So that's going to be, a very nice event for people who are able to attend. So a lot of good things going on to celebrate mental health awareness month.
The Rotary is doing its food trucks again that month, so the Rotary food trucks will also be out that Wednesday night, so it'd be a good night to
Okay.
get out.
Excellent.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. I'm gonna hold F because we have a change to a typo on that. I'm gonna hold H, the executive session minutes.
I'd like to hold B,
D,
B.
B.
And
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
so on C, D, E, and G, I move that the board approve those consent agenda items.
Second.
All those in favor? So starting with A, the meeting minutes.
April 23rd, I have some small changes.
Yep. Okay,
Ready?
yes.
Line 8, my copy was missing the meeting link referred to.
Mine has it.
Mine
Okay,
has it.
mine didn't, so, okay.
How'd that happen?
Beats me. Line 103 and 105, I think should start new small subsections, Romanet 4 and 5. Sort of run together there.
Yes, that's right.
And line 173, I think that should say ARPA dollars contracted by 12/31/24 and spent by 12/31/25. Or 6 maybe, I can't remember. I was confused by that.
You're talking about 173?
173.
Well, that's actually what Carla did tell them, is 6:30, just to make sure they don't wait to the last minute.
Yeah,
So
okay.
she is saying you gotta do it by 6:30/24. That's what she did say.
She said.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then line 276, I would say a variety of inappropriate comments.
That's fine with me. Anything else?
Yep, that's it for me.
On the 23rd of April, line 47, I think he spelled Alviti is the last name. And it's mentioned 3 times in total.
How do you think it's spelled, Marguerite?
I looked him up in the nosy book, Alvit as in Tom, I.
So T instead of D.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I had one other, line 60. I think if you're gonna say Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee and then give the AHTFC and then Community Preservation and then say CPC, when you do SHOPC, you should give the full name of SHOPC and then the acronym after it.
What line?
I think I'm on
160?
60.
60?
Yeah.
Oh, 160.
Or 160?
No, 60. Am I in the wrong, wait a minute, it's on page 137 of the,
Yeah, it's line 160.
it's 160? Oh, it must have, oh, it cut off the left margin when I printed, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, so just the full name of SHOPC and then the initials. That's all.
Any other comments?
No.
I move that the board approve the open session meeting minutes for April 23rd as amended.
Second?
All those in favor? Okay, B, Al, you had a hold to this?
Yeah, I guess I want to understand why these two individuals did not get themselves sworn in. Do they still want to serve?
I have no reason to believe they don't want to serve, and this has happened to I think one other person before that we've had. But
Yeah, I'd give them one more chance, and if they don't, then we find.
well, I
somebody
think to
else.
do that, we needed to approve this consent agenda item.
Yeah, I'd say,
Okay.
I'd approve one more time. If they don't get sworn in with a second approval, then
I'm
I think we find.
gonna
somebody
approve,
else.
vote yay on one and nay on one.
We'll do it one at a time.
Okay, so I move that the board appoint or renew the vote to appoint Destin Heilman to the 21 Highland Future Use Committee for a term to expire 6/30/2024.
Second?
All those in favor? I move that the board appoint Freddie Gillespie as the OSPC representative to the 21 Highland Future Use Committee with a term to expire 6/30/24.
Second?
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, passes 3-2.
So that was 3-2.
3-2 to support.
I just want to make sure that Bridget can hear us. That's why I'm repeating this.
Okay,
When she goes back to this.
all right. On item F, the useful life for equipment. I know Kathy, you had some suggested changes to this, and then Brian explained, this is bond council's language, but there's a typo in there, you know.
He's gonna fix it. He did, got the.
Okay, so there's a date there that says 2023, it should say 2024.
He's got, it should say March 23rd, 2024. It says March 24th, 2023. It just reversed to 24 and 23.
Scrivener's error.
Okay, so with the correction of that Scrivener's error, I move that we approve the useful life for town equipment.
Second?
All those in favor? And we'll just take up the executive session meeting minutes at our next executive session. Okay.
If someone has a change.
Yes, okay. So the only remaining item here is the regional dispatch survey results. Al?
Yep, you want to pull them up? I will speak quickly and be fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we did, there were two sets of surveys that we've done in the working group in the last month and a half. And the first one, I did a survey of regional dispatch organizations. I sent a survey out to basically every rec in the north of Plymouth and east of Worcester. So in the greater Boston area, with the exception of Foxborough, because Foxborough has an unusual usage pattern, given the stadium and the other venues there. I got responses from 4 with financial data. And basically, I asked about the total operating budget before subsidy, and which I think is the important.
State subsidy?
What?
With it before a state subsidy?
Yeah, before any subsidy. So, the total operating budget. So this is, I think, the important metric, because we're making a long-term decision here. Long-term, just like the Quinn bill, we can't be guaranteed that the state will be there forever. So we have to ask, what would it cost if we stand on our own? And I think that's the appropriate thing. So if we can move to the next slide. So the first one I did was per capita dispatch costs. Essentially, this is the metric that says, what is every taxpayer paying for our dispatch services? And you'll see that Southborough 2024, which is under a single dispatcher operations, we're just shy of $60. And the interesting thing here is that number is in the same ballpark as the 4 regional dispatch systems that provide us with financial data. Holbrook, which is the largest by far, they serve a population of over 150,000, is the leader there, is suggesting that there are some scale effects. The others are all, they're in that $50 to $60 range. You know, it's not perfect. The Southborough number is not quite comparable because there's management in all of the dispatch centers that is not included in the Southborough number, but it's pretty comparable. Now, when you start adding headcount, which is, you know, the +2 or the +4, which we considered, you know, our per capita costs, not surprisingly, go up. And go up quite a bit. And we can move to the next slide. So if you look at the dispatchers and supervisors per capita on the busiest shift, which is the question I asked, how many people do you have on your busiest shift? And the interesting thing here is that, again, today's operation, we have basically, it's about 1 per 10,450 because that's the population of Southborough in the census. I use census data for all of the populations. And the interesting thing is that is a number that is in the same ballpark as the regional dispatch systems. So if we keep that 10, you know, 1 dispatcher per 10,000 number in your head, because it's going to be the driver going forward. And again, if, you know, we add headcount, then all of a sudden, you know, on our busiest shift, you know, we're down quite low in terms of dispatchers per capita, if you like. So we can move to the next slide. I actually go back to that slide one more time. The one thing you'll notice about Middleton is state funded and completely state funded. Their member communities don't pay anything into that rec. It's a good deal. We just keep that in mind as well. So proceeding forward.
Al, if it just, is that in like the North Shore, middle?
Yeah, that's the North Shore. Basically, it runs
by
Manchester, Middleton, North Reading, I think just joined, Topsfield. And that one serves a population of about 47,000.
Okay.
So this one's not making, so what are you trying to say with this one?
This is just how many dispatchers, and you know, how many people at the end of the phone line there are per capita in effect.
Population served by.
Yeah, so, you know, right now it's 1 per 10,000 and we'll drop to about half that on the busiest shift, because that's the question I asked. So we can go to the next slide. So the real issue is depth of coverage. And, you know, if Southborough today, our depth of coverage is 1. And if we add dispatcher, again, this is on the busiest shift, we would be comparable to Air. Air as a regional dispatch center only serves about 9,000 people. So it's really not much different than we are. Now, when you get into South Worcester and Neshoba, you're up at 3. Middleton, which is now at 47,000 people, they're up at 5. This is this one that's state funded. And then, of course, you got Holbrook, which is serving a lot more. They're at 14. And so you can see that, you know, its depth of coverage is the big difference in all of these operations. So we can move to the next slide. And again, I apologize for going fast, but I think people want me to. Then these are 911 calls per dispatcher per shift. This is not a perfect number, but it is instructive. And, you know, we're a quiet little town, which is kind of nice. Air appears to be quieter. All of the other dispatch centers are, you know, they're in the same ballpark, maybe a little busier, but it's in the same ballpark. So we can move to the next slide. So the conclusions, the thing to remember is Southborough is a small town. And, you know, we should base our financial decisions on what we believe are the long-term costs for joining a rec. And we should assume that the state will not subsidize. With a single dispatcher coverage, we are in the same financial ballpark as the recs. Under any expanded dispatch cover, we are at a financial disadvantage due to the rec. This is only looking at the financials. It's not dealing with the other questions. And the subsidies exacerbate this advantage substantially. So the long and the short of it is, even if there were no subsidies and we were looking at this on a financial basis, joining a rec, if we want to have deeper coverage, if that's important to us, and it is, I believe, important with respect to the public safety priority, then joining a rec is the least expensive way to achieve that goal. Again, not taking into account the other things. So that's the first study. Then the second study, if we can move to the next slide. I told you I'd talk fast. One more. Is Chief Newell sent out, there's a survey to the police chiefs, and there is a network that allows them to do that sort of thing. And terrific job, by the way. He took the bull by the horns and did it. 43 chiefs responded. 19 were not part of a rec today, and 24 were. So we can go to the next slide. So for those that were part of a rec, are you satisfied? And this is a pretty impressive slide. There was one chief that was not happy. There were a couple that were, made probably okay. And then, but 17 were satisfied. That's pretty good. So, we sometimes hear as an objection, oh, the chiefs hate it. It's terrible. They'd want to pull out. No. So we can go to the next slide. Would you do it again? And again, we get similar results. I'd say that by and large, on the police side of the house, they're satisfied. And there is a difference between the police side and the fire side in terms of their priorities and how they view regional dispatch. So we can go to the next slide. So then this was an open-ended survey, so I had to kind of calibrate. And motivations to join. This is the most surprising thing I found anyway. 6 of the 13 people who responded said difficulty in hiring dispatchers was their principal motivation. The same number talked about cost savings. And then, there was a small number that said, single dispatcher at risk. They were interested in equipment upgrades and quality improvements. The chief asked about what are the keys to success. And, being fully involved in the operation of the rec was viewed as critical. So, if we join a rec, our chiefs and whoever is responsible on the executive side need to be, there and on top of things. Ride-alongs for new dispatchers was identified in several places. Another one, which may seem obvious, but some of us have been there, is making sure everything works before you make the switch. And there's probably going to be pressure in a new system to make the switch before everything is ready, and that's something that's we've got to be worked on. Clear arrangements for cost sharing, and then it was just communications, which is really driving the others. So then if we can go to the next one. So then why haven't you joined a rec? And there were 10 responses with multiple factors: loss of control, quality of service concerns, expenses. I don't quite understand that one, but they said it, so I'll take it. Governance was only mentioned once. Impact on existing dispatchers was mentioned once, and local knowledge was mentioned once. I think that might relate to quality of service and control. This kind of aligns with the conversation we had with the fire chiefs when we were doing the chiefs interviews, and what they told us was the objections in any community are always the same, and these are the objections. But this is why. But go to the next slide. Ask them, if you're not in a rec, are you considering joining? And 2/3 are at least giving it a thought. So, I think the handwriting, both of these really suggest that, the handwriting is on the wall here. And so I think, yeah, there we go. Oh, the last one was Dark Station. Chief asked about Dark Station. 4 of 15 reported that their stations are fully staffed, 24/7. 7 of 15 said that their lobbies are electronic now, which means, there's a video link and an audio link. The dispatchers can lock and unlock doors, and patrolling officers can be summoned quickly. And then 4 of 15 reported a hybrid model, which is the lobby is staffed for part of the day, typically some definition of business hours. It could range from, 9 to 5 to roughly 12 hours. And then a video link per the above. I think there was discussion in the working group that, you know, were we to do this, probably the hybrid model is the one that would probably make the most sense. So that's the feedback we got. My intent here is, if we make the decision to go forward, I think this presentation or parts of it are part of what we're going to need to do in a community education activity. You know, there's a lot of work that has to be done to educate the community, assuming we want to win a vote on the floor at town meeting, which if we do this, I want to win that vote. So that's the survey. The Chief Newell did a great job, and we had a very productive set of meetings. I know that Sam wants to add anything to that.
Nope, very productive, and our new Chief Pantini is now engaged in the conversation and seems to be a great resource in terms of his experience with his Foxborough history. So look forward to continue to have him engaged.
All right. I agree. I think this is a very good presentation.
Oh, excellent presentation.
All right,
Very clear.
I think that wraps up the items that are on our posted agenda. And is there any remaining public comment?
I don't see any hands up in
Okay.
the audience.
Good night,
Thanks, Grant.
Public comment.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, very quick. CPC is having a public forum on June 6th to solicit ideas for potential funding opportunities for the next cycle. So that's June 6th when we're having that. So just as a heads up.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, I now move that the board enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, and not returning to open session to discuss contract negotiations for the town administrator. Exemption 2 is the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position.
Second.
Okay, I think we need to take a roll call vote to go into executive session. Dennington, aye.
Both aye.
Stivers, aye.
Landry, aye.